Chapter 426. After several hours of recreational activities, Camilla fell asleep as soon as they started cuddling. By checking his watch, Lith noticed there was not enough time to reset Invigoration's effects. Besides, he had already slept the night before, so he was still at his peak condition. He used accumulation to further refine his core while staring at Camilla's sleeping face. Somehow, she kept grinning even while unconscious. Lith chuckled at the sight. Just like air magic allowed him to cheat at singing, light magic had done its part during the night. Thanks to Invigoration and some custom-made spells, he had an easy time discovering his partner's most sensitive zones, when to stimulate them, and how delicate or not he had to be to achieve the maximum effect. He kept caressing her head while checking the room with life vision. Lith didn't feel comfortable in an alien environment, and his paranoia demanded its due. Aside from the lights and Camilla's communication amulet, there was nothing magical in the whole room. A couple of hours later, he felt her moving. "Good morning, gorgeous," Lith said while leaning forward for a kiss. "Good morning, handsome," she replied with a soft, sleepy kiss as she pulled him closer. "I hope I didn't wake you up," he said while checking at the clock still floating at the corner of his eye. "Nah, it's because for some reason my face hurts." Seems someone had too much fun and smiled even in her sleep. Lith used light magic to give her muscles relief from the stress and injected her a bit of life force. At those words, Camilla blushed violently. "Did I?" She pulled the sheets to cover her chest and revealed Lith's in doing so. "Indeed. I was wondering, since we have the time, may I ask for an encore?" After his performance in the restaurant, the musical reference made her giggle. How could I say no to such romantic words? She was already enjoying the scenery, and her body felt oddly full of energy despite the lack of sleep. "Wait," Lith said before things got too heated and words had no place anymore in the room. "Just for academic purposes, I'd like to know what was the turning point that led to our current situation. Was it the flowers? The suit? The song? My speech about magic?" The events had escalated quickly. Lith was both curious and confused about what he had done to hit the jackpot. All the above was very cute, but nothing more, she said with a ravenous smile. "Just cute? All that effort for a frigging cute," Lith thought, but didn't dare to say, afraid to ruin the mood. It was the part about starting a relationship with a lie. She was tired of talking and started kissing him with a quick gradation of intensity. Honesty, then? It didn't make much sense, but at least he could understand it. "No, silly." She giggled so hard that she was forced to stop. "You calling what we had starting a relationship? It made me understand how seriously you were taking our story." "That's it," Lith blurted out. "Seriously, what the actual F?" Lith never got to finish the phrase as Camilla pushed him down the bed and shut him up for good. After that, there was barely enough time for a quick shower and breakfast. Lith employed magic to prepare the hot water for the tea in an instant and heated the pastries to make them regain a part of their fragrance. Out of habit, he even cleaned and washed the whole place. Camilla came out of the still steaming bathroom fully dressed while dabbing her long black hair with a bath towel. It had taken her less than 5 minutes, so she remained dumbstruck in seeing the pristine room and the steaming breakfast. "How did you?" "Magic." He cut her short while removing the excess water from her hair with a flick of his wrist. "I could definitely get used to it," she mumbled out loud. They ate in silence until Lith took a deep breath and then another one. "Please, don't take this the wrong way, but there's something I have to tell you." Camilla felt the ground splitting below her feet. Her mother's words echoed again in her mind. She could almost hear Kima laughing at her stupidity. "I knew it was too good to be true. Maybe he has already a wife or a fiancé waiting for him at home. Or maybe he just wants to dump me now that he has got what he wanted." "Yes," she said while forcing herself to smile, while fighting an insistent tear that wanted to be shed at all costs. "I don't know when I'll get the next leave, and I still don't know you, or what you really like." Lith took out the green stem from the middle of the bouquet. "So, instead of buying something that would just be a waste of space, I made this for you. You know, to share a part of me with you, and give you something to remember me by until our next date." Camilla took it from his hands. Her smile turned sincere. It was the cheapest, ugliest present she had ever seen, but it was much better than what she had feared. "It's beautiful," she said with a dazzling smile that left Lith flabbergasted. "No, not yet," he blurted out in a stupor. "I was saying, don't take it the wrong way. I'm not trying to be clingy or to show off. It's just something I made for you. No strings attached. Now it was Camilla's turn to be confused. That twisted, badly hammered green piece of metal could hardly be considered showing off. Imprint it, please, he said with a chuckle as he watched her dumbfounded expression. Camilla put a bit of her mana into the stem, and a red camellia made of flickering flames bloomed from its tip. It's beautiful, she repeated. This time it wasn't just the relief talking. Yes, now it is. He explained to Camilla how it worked and how to keep it alive before putting it back into the vase. Much to her surprise, the small flames didn't affect the other flowers. How is it called? She asked while clinging tight to him, wishing for that moment to never end. It's still a work in progress, he hastily replied. I'm not so dumb to tell her that it's named after her. It's too early for that. I already feel we're rushing things a bit. Lith thought and Solus approved. It's the best way to downplay it. Still, you suck with words. She sighed. You almost made her cry, just like you did with Floria every time you pulled out your "we need to talk" speech. Lith had many objections to raise in the matter, but Camilla interrupted them by hugging him tightly while burying her head in his chest. Thank you. It's a wonderful present. This time she was fighting to hold back tears of joy. Camilla didn't want to turn their goodbye into a sad memory. I don't know what to say besides that it makes me happy. Lith returned her embrace, and they remained like that until the tyrannical nature of time turned two people who were sharing a moment together into two soldiers with a duty to uphold. Chapter 427. Returning to Caduria didn't take long. During his travels, Lith had made sure to memorize landmarks at fixed intervals. They allowed him to use warp steps to cross dozens of miles in the blink of an eye. It required a huge expenditure of mana, but nothing that a single use of invigoration couldn't fix. While using his breathing technique, Lith noticed how despite the ruins of the lost city were exactly as he left them, they felt different. Brigadier General Vorg had deactivated the barrier, letting the world energy flow through the land again. There was still no grass. Not even insects or small animals had come to reclaim Caduria. Yet by looking at the debris, Lith felt a sense of peace spreading through his being, like he had healed an ugly scar that had disfigured that place for too long. He took out his army communicator and called his handler. Ranger Verhen, reporting to base. I'm back to Caduria already. I'll rest a bit, and then I'll resume my travel toward the south. I'm heading to the city of Other. Copy that. No hologram appeared, and Camilla's voice was detached and professional. Some of her colleagues thought that things had already gone sour between them. Keep the channel open while I mark your position, she said while the amulet emitted a few pings. We're done. Your next report is due to noon unless something relevant happens. Over and out. Lith took off immediately, reaching an altitude that allowed him to scout for miles in every direction. His first days of travels were quiet and boring. Every time he noticed living beings thanks to life vision, he had to check them for tribes of fallen monsters. The province was still barren because of the long-term effects of the Black Star, but the further he got from Caduria, the more natural resources were available. Enough for a small group of any fallen race to increase their numbers and become a threat. Most of his sightings were just animals, wandering humans, or magical beasts. The wanderers were often just lunatics. People who had lost everything and had no place to return to. They would yell at Litha's arrival, demanding to be left alone before he could even offer them assistance. Sometimes he met caravans of merchants that had lost their way after being attacked by bandits or monsters. In such case, Lith would point them the way and hunt them down their attackers. Without mages protecting them, humans and monsters were just lambs led to a slaughterhouse. Lith would kill the monsters with a snap of his fingers. As for the humans, he would stalk them for a while to make sure they weren't part of a larger group or to find their hideout. Organized crime was a weed that the kingdom had no tolerance for. Between the sightings and his investigations, Litha's traveling speed slowed down significantly. Mana geysers were scarce, forcing him to sleep on trees or not sleep at all. Damn it. Now I understand why a ranger is forced to change their duty after every tour. This job is as boring as dangerous. Lith thought during his fourth day of travel, while he was eating his lunch in a patch of woods. He had underestimated his job and was now paying the consequences for it. Without mana geysers, Solus was just a voice in his head. He had lots of good food with him, but it brought him no solace. He had to constantly stay alert. Both his training and paranoia made him eat everything so fast he could barely taste his meals. Until that moment, he had always had a roof above his head, a table where to sit down, and people around him. People he might have despised or not cared about, but joining or avoiding them had always been his own choice. Now there was only silence and isolation. He was tempted to ignore his duty and rush to the nearest city. He started to hope meeting monsters just to break the monotony of his existence. Even without a mana geyser, I can still give you a place where to rest. Solus offered at the end of the 5th day as the sun was setting. Thanks, but the thought that every second I sleep you are literally bleeding your core for me would give me the nightmares. He replied. Lith treasured every moment he spent speaking with his family and with Camilla on his civilian amulet. They were his only link to a semblance of a normal life. Whenever one of their contact runes lighted up, he would soar up in the sky, making it impossible to take him by surprise. Any flying creature dumb or unlucky enough to disturb their conversations would be dealt with extreme prejudice. Be them flying monsters or migratory birds, they would all be turned into mincemeat before they could even get close to him. 7 days after he left Belius, he was finally able to reach the city of Other. Damn, I would have never thought that chasing small fries would take this long. The presence of Kaduria kept everything at large, otherwise I would have never reached it that fast. 7 days, and not a single mana geyser, just my luck. He thought while approaching the city's high walls. Come on, it was just one long, hellish week with no bathroom and no sleep. Solus chuckled. The good news is we are once again early on schedule. You may get another leave and visit the city with your new girlfriend. What could possibly go wrong? Free country of Lamerth, beyond the eastern borders of the Gorgon Empire. 4 years had passed since the destruction of the Master's lab located under the Blood Desert. Losing so much equipment and specimens had been a major setback, but at the same time a blessing in disguise. Unbeknownst to the Guardians, even to Lee Gain, one of the arrays had spied the events occurred during the attack, allowing the Master to collect a massive amount of information about how the Guardian could call upon the world energy and to witness the fight between Solark and their most powerful eldritch abomination. The data collected had finally revealed to the Master a glimpse of the Guardian's true nature. It was the reason why he had sent Grimus, the rockworm, to study and collect the Orc's purple crystal. With it, the Master would become able to conjure and manipulate the world energy just like the Guardian did, gaining access to an unlimited source of power for both their experiments and minions. Unluckily, after that stroke of luck, everything had gone south. All the information about Arthan's madness had become unavailable, even for those with the highest clearance. With the death of Gadorf the Wyvern, they had lost one of their main source of income. Thanks to Balkier, the Guardians had researched a way to more easily find eldritch abominations and were using them to track the Master's activities, forcing them to move with even more caution and use their most powerful servants only when strictly necessary. These events combined had stuck their research in a dead end. To add insult to the injury, the crystal was lost and Jarek, one of his most capable allies, had disappeared. The crystal is the real problem. Maybe Verhen has it, but maybe not. I can't kick the Royal's hornet nest just because of a suspicion, not now that he has become a great mage. Let's hope Jarek hasn't made things even messier. Stealth and interrogation are its specialties, after all. The Master said with a chuckle. Master, I bring grave news. Xenogrosh, the Eldritch specialized in tracking warped in front of them. Is the crystal broken? It's not a big deal. I have already located a lesser specimen that could still work just fine for our purposes. The Master shrugged. No, there is no trace of the crystal. What I found is the evidence that Jarek has been killed. That idiot. The Master roared. I told it to watch out for the core and the damned evolved monsters. Wrong again. It was killed by a single enemy, and an eldritch at that. Xenogrosh's 4 red eyes were reduced to fiery slits while it made its report. I'm afraid we have a competitor. Chapter 428. A competitor? The Master couldn't believe his own ears. Those 2 single words alone could mean that decades of hard work were at stake. If another eldritch was involved in the purple crystal's disappearance, maybe it was an inside job all along. It would have explained a lot of things. Abominations were fickle and greedy by nature. The only thing they respected was power. Eldritchs were the sum of their best and worst traits. If any abominations started to believe that the Master wouldn't be able to deliver their promise, they wouldn't hesitate a second to betray them. I believed all eldritchs living on the Galen continent were on our side. The master said. It could be an ancient one that just awoke from its slumber. Xenagrosh replied. Or maybe a youngster that evolved recently. The only thing I know is that the smell was that of a crafty eldritch. It had distorted its scent by mixing it with several others, but my senses are not easily fooled. Otherwise, I would have mistaken it for a human's. Let's not rush our judgment. The master quickly regained their cool. Maybe it's not a competitor. After all, a purple crystal is an almost endless source of nourishment for an abomination. It allows the likes of you to hide in plain sight without having to harvest energy from living beings. Best case scenario, its actions will get the guardians off our tail. They can't distinguish between a rogue, eldritch, and our own. Worst case scenario, it will ruin us all. We don't know how much it learned from Jarek, nor what it will do with such knowledge. Xenagrosh's warning was too ominous to ignore it. The master could only sigh and plan the hunting of this new player that threatened to topple their already shaky chessboard. The city of Other. Lith reached the massive gates made of solid wood and steel as the sun was slowly starting to set. Other was the biggest trade city in the Keller region, also known as the warehouse. Food provisions were a big issue for cities without warp gates. Because of the North's harsh climate, settlements could remain isolated for weeks during the winter months. Blizzards were so powerful that even mages capable of flight would be stuck in their homes. The cold season was closing in and merchants came from all the Griffin Kingdom to sell the food supplies they could spare for a price way higher than their market value. Every year fear bred crisis, which in turn provided to a few the opportunity to get rich at the expenses of many. Timing was of the essence, because to avoid panic and rioting the local governor had the authority to fix a ceiling price. If a merchant sold too early, they would saturate the market and earn little. Too late and fixed prices would lead to the same result. Where's the nearest hotel? Lith asked one of the guards that were checking the incoming carriages and taking note of all the food entering Other. The guard's annoyed gaze disappeared the moment her eyes met Lith's. The ranger in front of him was way taller, more annoyed, and angrier than the guard. Thanks to darkness magic, Lith didn't stink, and water magic had allowed him to remain clean. Yet after a week without a single second of relax, during which he had been forced to do his business behind bushes, Lith would gladly kill anyone standing between him and a bathroom. Go straight, then turn left on King's Road. You can't miss it, sir. The woman stepped aside as her survival instinct kicked in. A word of advice, sir. Her shift would last hours, and she didn't want to see Lith again. Because of winter, dimensional magic is banned inside the city. Before entering, you should take out whatever you may need. Lith inwardly cursed against all the inhabitants of the North and their hate for dimensional magic. He took out a few coins, the gatekeeper, and both his communication amulets. Now I understand why the uniform comes with a utility belt, he angrily thought. While he walked towards the hotel, Lith reported his arrival to his handler. I'm sorry, sir, said a kid bumping into him while playing with her brother. I'm not, Lith replied while grabbing her arm and dislocating her shoulder to retrieve his pouch, which she had just stolen. The desperate cries of the girl drawn the attention of several people who stared at him in anger. What was that noise? Camilla asked. An accident. Over and out. Lith replied, eager to stop talking with his handler and get in touch with his girlfriend. She's just a kid, yelled an angry woman. Fucking rangers. They should be kept in the wilds with the beasts, where they belong. A man added as several outraged voices joined the chorus. Lith didn't even slow down his pace. Maybe I should rob them and see if their charity extends to their own money or is limited to mine. He angrily thought. She is just a kid. Maybe she was hungry. The popping sound kept echoing in Solas's mind. She felt terrible about what had happened. She could have just begged. I would have refused. You would have nagged me, and I would have given her some copper coins. She played with fire and got burned. A pebble struck the back of Litha's head, making him turn around. A small crowd was assembled around the two kids and were staring at him in defiance. Between the skinwalker armor and his enhanced physique, Lith had barely noticed the hit. Yet it had been strong enough to make a normal man bleed. Who threw that? He asked with a casual voice and received no answer but middle fingers. All guilty then. A wave of his hand and an earth spell made the crowd fall on their knees while holding their heads in pain. Each one of them had been hit by a small stone, repaying them in kind. You are all under arrest for assaulting and slandering an officer. Another wave of his hand made their arms and legs sink into the ground. If and when I bother reporting this to a constable, they will free you. Have a nice day. The moment Lith gave them his back, the two kids and their accomplices hiding in the nearby alleys robbed all those present blind. Was that really necessary? Solus had hoped that after Camilla, after being alone for so long in the wilds, Lith would have softened up towards people. Poetic justice. Lith replied, "Look at the bright side. The girl now has more than enough money to get her shoulder fixed." He reached the Swan Song Hotel in less than a minute. It was a 2-story stone building with a pitched roof and a banner representing a swan sitting near a maiden who was playing the harp. The door opened into a common hall, the pavement of which was made of hardwood. Colorful carpets were placed under the wood tables that occupied most of the space. A huge fireplace spread light and warmth for the customers that were enjoying their dinner or simply resting from their daily activities. Chapter 429. How much for your best room? Lith asked the receptionist, a young man about his own age. He was too tired to care about money. A good bed and a hot bath were the only thing she could think about. 1 silver coin per night. The man yelped. It was actually more expensive, but the gatekeeper at Lith's waist looked mean and the man carrying it even meaner. "Excuse me, are you Ranger Verhen?" asked a mage in his 30s. He was of average height, with a lean build and kind chestnut eyes. Judging from his silver robe, he worked for the Mage Association. Depends who's asking. Lith gave the receptionist the money and his ID, making sure the stranger couldn't read it. "I'm Mage Dorian Fellhorn. I'm your liaison with the local branch of the association." Clearly Fellhorn had recognized Lith. His earlier question was a formality. "I'm sorry, but even if I was who you think I am, I work for the army now. So unless you have written orders for me, I've no reason to listen to you." Lith took his room's key and walked towards the stairs leading to the first floor. "Wait, you don't understand. I may not have an official authorization yet, but I need your help. The association is in a pinch." Lith had to admit the guy was brave. Even when pressed by his Sunday killing intent, Dorian didn't flinch. He even had the gall to grab his shoulder. "I'm sure they are, but unless there's something in for me, I don't care." Lith shrugged the hand away. "Bottom line, I could come with you. It's just that I don't want to." Lith's annoyed tone achieved what even his meanest glare had failed to. The second Dorian was too shocked by Lith's disregard for whatever news he was the bearer of. The ranger disappeared upstairs. Dorian took out his communication amulet from one of his robe's pockets. "I'm sorry, sir. I failed my mission." Great Mage Verhen was crystal clear in his refusal to even listen to me. "The body count is already in the dozens and is bound to getting worse." Damn. I hoped that him choosing to be promoted in our ranks rather than in the armies meant he would be more sympathetic to our cause, said a man's voice coming from the amulet. The Mage Association was in dire straits for years. New and old noble families hated them for wiping them from Mogar overnight. But most of all, because unlike the army, it was impossible for non-mages to join their ranks. Ever since the plague event happened 5 years ago, the association's reputation was in steady decline. First, they had failed to cure or even contain the plague, leaving all the glory to the army and the White Griffin. Then, they had been useless against Balkir's attack. Once again, the lion's share of the merits belonged to the White Griffin. The army had at least provided troops, while most mages had run for their lives along with their families. Last, but not least, the Mage Association had failed to keep Haytorn in check, to find Headmaster Linnea who was still on the run, and even to prevent the mass production of slave items that had led to Nalir's attack. The association was on its last leg. Its political support dwindled every year. Even the Queen was considering the idea of turning the association in a branch of the army and redistribute their funds. After all, the heroes who had stopped the Mad Professor all belonged to the army. Lady Journey, Commander Orion, and Captain Floria. The only exception was Lith Verhen, a free agent at best. Money or merits could buy his services, but not his loyalty. "We have no choice. I'll contact the army and have them borrow him to us before the royal constable arrives. That way, he will be our player. We need a big victory. Failure is not an option. If all else fails, we still have our ace in the hole." Technically, it's more like a double-edged sword. Dorian didn't like Archmage Court's plan. Stealing a dragon's egg could force the beast to compromise, but it would also provoke its animosity. If we fail, a great mage's wrath will be the last of our problems. I'll keep you posted. Meanwhile, Lith was having dinner with his family. Thanks to the communication amulet, they could share the table even at thousands of kilometers of distance. Others sucks, this work sucks. Lith was complaining to his parents while consuming the food provided by the room service. Everywhere I go, people treat rangers almost like criminals. Despite all the time I spend in the wilds, I'm already sick of this place. I'll leave tomorrow early in the morning. I read that the communities in the north are tight-knit. Raz had bought a book about the Keller region. He hated studying, but that way he was able to understand what his son was going through. It also allowed them to share a deeper conversation than small talk. You can't blame them for being suspicious. Even here in Lusha, we don't like strangers or cops. To them, you are both. By the way, Other is famous for its open market. You might find rare books or ingredients there. Good point, Dad. Thanks, I will give it a look. Lith had the same book in Solaspedia, but was grateful for Raz's thoughtfulness. Alina was proud of her husband going an extra mile for their son and jealous because she felt cut out. I need to get hold of that damn book, she thought. Lith was dead tired after a week always being on full alert. He fell asleep the moment his head touched the pillow and was awakened a few hours later by an explosion coming from outside. Solus? He asked as his pajamas shape-shifted into his ranger uniform. Yes, you never call the constable. Those poor people are likely to be still stuck there. She pouted. Who cares about that? I meant, what was that noise? Something is happening on the other side of the road, but it doesn't make sense. She replied. Lith looked through the window in his room and noticed that the door of one of the shops in front of the hotel had been blown to bits. A few seconds later, a poorly dressed woman came out of it, carrying bags full of food and money. You are right, it doesn't make sense. How can someone so malnourished beat up so many men? Lith pondered while staring at the scene. Several shops had already been robbed, and their owners were out cold in the middle of the street. It's not that. Solus replied with a sigh after noticing that Lith wasn't going to intervene. That woman has a red mana core and a human body, yet her mana flow is comparable to a yellow core. How is that possible? She's absorbing world energy at a rate comparable to yours when using invigoration. She might be an awakened. Chapter 430. Why would an awakened need to steal in such a blatant way? Lith thought while going downstairs. Even a bit of spirit magic would be enough to get her what she wants without drawing so much attention. Maybe she just discovered her powers. Solus pondered. Otherwise, I can't explain how she still has a red core. Another thing I can't understand is how she can possibly keep invigoration active while moving. Lith found several guests of the hotel staring at the scene through the windows. I told you we shouldn't have picked a hotel in the Outer Rim, you damn cheapskate. A middle-aged woman was angrily whispering to her husband, like she was afraid of drawing the attention of the crazed thief. The couple was wearing a gray dressing gown with the hotel's insignia over their clothes. 1 silver coin per night is cheap. Lith shuddered at the idea of how much money more luxurious accommodations would require. Why? Does this happen often? He pointed his forefinger toward the events unfolding outside. Of course, it's the god's damned Outer Rim. The woman was clearly annoyed at Lith's question, which forced her to state the obvious. Every year, when winter approaches, all kinds of vagrants and lunatics fill the roads of the city to find shelter until spring. Because of those hungry beasts, the crime rate always spikes. Speaking of hungry beasts, why are you still here? Aren't you a ranger? It's your duty to uphold the law. Not inside other. At the moment, I'm just a tired traveler. Lith wanted to investigate the mystery, but the woman's rudeness had almost changed his mind. The hotel would greatly appreciate your help in keeping its guests safe. Someone promptly added. Lith turned around towards the voice. It belonged to a silver-haired man dressed like a member of the staff. According to the tags on his chest, his name was Pennon and he was the night manager. Please, help them. Solus pleaded him. Some of the people outside are badly wounded. They need a healer, and you will get your money back. It's a win-win situation. Lith didn't care about a single silver coin. Pennon's offer was meaningless to him. Solus's plea in discovering how the heck someone of that age with no experience with magic could possibly awaken was another story. Lith came out from the hotel and extended his arm, using spirit magic to paralyze his opponent. He didn't expect it to work. To be able to knock down men way taller and heavier than her, the woman had to be able to use fusion magic. Litha's intention was to check how effective spirit magic would be against such a weak awakened. Best case scenario, he would manage to slow her enough to hold her in place and get some answers before the city constables arrived on the crime scene. Contrary to his expectations, his tendrils of mana were sucked by the woman's invigoration technique and completely nullified. What the heck? Lith thought. Invigoration shouldn't work that way. Absorbing someone else's mana is like drinking poison. The homeless woman screamed in pain before turning toward Lith and releasing a fire wave the size of a truck. The spell was powerful, but there was no technique or planning behind it. Like a child throwing a tantrum, its energies were violent but chaotic. Lith needed but a thought to take control of the fire wave and snuff it out. Before he could counterattack, the woman clenched her belly and collapsed to the ground. Lith had no idea what was happening. He wanted to use invigoration to study her body, but he knew that if she absorbed it too, she would die before she could answer his questions. Solus. It's just like you think. Your spirit magic has infected her core, and it's killing her. It's already half gray. She replied. There was nothing Lith could do for mana poisoning. He could only hope the woman's core would recover while he took care of the wounded. All of them were badly burned, some almost to a crisp. Only because Lith could cure 2 people at once and was able to use invigoration to give them massive amounts of life, force no one died that night. No one except the woman. How is this even possible? Lith thought. Invigoration should be able to absorb only world energy. Plus, the mana I used wasn't nearly enough to kill her, not even if I poisoned her on purpose. Which I didn't. I know. Solus replied. Normally her mana flow should have countered the foreign mana all the way to her core. It would have caused her pain, but would have also weakened your mana to the point that even a red core could resist such measly pressure. Her invigoration technique carried it directly to her core, making it lethal instead. A few minutes later, a couple of constables and a mage arrived to the scene. Thanks for taking care of the problem for us, the senior officer said. Usually our response time is much better than this, but criminals like this one are popping up like mushrooms, and we cannot move without a mage. We have already lost too many people. The officer spat on the homeless woman's corpse. It's terrible news, Lith said, eager to go back to sleep. Those people were severely injured. This is what the city owes me for the healings. The mage took a small piece of paper where Lith had listed the cares given and his fares according to the White Griffin standards. She put it in her pockets without even looking at it. What happened to her? The mage said while pointing at the corpse. Her honey-colored eyes looked tired and dispirited, like those of a soldier fighting a lost battle. Wish I knew. I used a simple air spell to restrict her, and she died. The mage completed the phrase for him. Don't worry, it's not your fault. It happens every single damn time, no matter the element used. Once the constables managed to restrict one only for the poor guy to die under the effects of a diagnostic spell. That's great news. It means that whatever they are not awakened. Which makes this none of my business. Lith thought. Solus would have liked to comment about his total lack of care for the well-being of the people of Other, but she had seen enough in one day to know it would be pointless. Maybe this is what that Fellhorn guy wanted to talk about. A lot of magic users committing crimes is something the association would have to deal with. It could fetch you a lot of merits. Solus tried a subtler approach on the matter. Too bad I don't need them. I've already got what I could from the association after I graduated. Otherwise, I wouldn't have joined the army. What I need is to finish my patrol as fast as I can. That way I can obtain a long leave and work on the crystal. Lith replied. The following morning, during a sumptuous breakfast served privately on the hotel's terrace for Lith only, he called his handler. This is Ranger Verhen. I need some time to restock my provisions, and then I'll be ready to leave Other. He actually had no need for food. His pocket dimension held enough to last him months. His aim was to look for rare books. Negative. You are not allowed to leave the city's perimeter. The commander has received a request for help from the association. Depending on his decision, your stay in Other might be prolonged until further notice. Chapter 431. Lith spent his morning visiting the small bookshops located in the city's middle rim. Other was divided into 3 areas. The outer rim, where Lith resided, was the biggest and the poorest one. It was where the commoners lived and the warehouses were located. Unless one possessed many dimensional items, Moving huge loads of merchandise required wagons and draft animals. The former generated intense traffic that made it almost impossible to walk during the busiest hours of the day despite the large roads and sidewalks. The latter naturally produced a pungent smell that would make even a stable boy puke his guts out. The houses were 1 or 2 stories high, made of stone or wood based on the owner's income. There was not a single empty space between them. Warehouses were easily recognizable by their huge size and double doors to allow carriages to easily get in and out at all times. The closest a warehouse was to the city gates, the more expensive it was, whereas for housings the opposite was true. The smell was a big deterrent. That was why Lith's hotel was located in a small street where carriages couldn't pass, away from the warehouses. The middle rim was occupied by merchants' shops, craftsmen's and artists' workshops. Only the middle class could afford a house there. They were all at least 2 stories high, each with a private garden. The middle rim streets were too narrow for carriages. Only stagecoaches were small enough to pass. Small parks were present every few blocks, to give some space for the children to play and a place for the travelers to rest in the shade of trees during the hottest hours of the day. The inner rim was where the rich, the nobles, and the mages resided. There weren't houses as much as mansions. Unlike Belius, the taller a building, the richer was the household. Lith avoided big shops because they had the necessary staff to go through all their merchandise. They were bound to identify real books about magic and sell them to the association that held the monopoly of the mystical knowledge. Small shops, instead, would buy more books than they could handle. With a bit of luck, one could find a precious tome cataloged as a diary, or even in the bargain bin. Many mages mixed research and personal life in their writings. Others used such convoluted technical jargon that a layman would easily mistake it for gibberish. It was the reason why, unless those books had some drawings, no one would give them a second look. Lith could only once again curse at the city arrays when his communication amulet interrupted his fruitless research. Normally, he would store a book in Solaspedia and search its contents in an instant before deciding if it was worth buying or not. The dimensional magic lock forced him to actually read them one by one in what he considered a colossal waste of time. The first call came from the army. Camilla notified Lith that the commander had agreed with the association's terms and ordered him to talk with their representative. The second one was from Mage Dorian Fellhorn, who gave him an appointment at the local branch of the Mage Association, located in the Inner Rim. The building consisted of a 3-story small castle built with reddish stones. Each of its 4 corners was occupied by a small tower surmounted with a blue mana crystal. A middle-aged clerk led Lith in an office located on the ground floor. The room's walls were covered by bookshelves. The only source of lighting was a magical chandelier hung in the middle of the ceiling. Dorian welcomed Lith and invited him to sit on one of the armchairs in front of his black mahogany desk. To Lith, Dorian said, "First of all, know that you are currently relieved from your role in the army until the end of the conversation. I'm not speaking with the ranger, but with the great mage." "Why am I here?" Lith asked while feeling more comfortable. The association worked on a voluntary basis. They couldn't order around members that didn't seek an active role in their ranks. Dorian explained to him the reasons for the association's decline and how they hoped to solve others' current crisis to avoid being swallowed by the army. "That's the reason you need me." Lith shook his head. "I am asking you why I should accept." Dorian had yet to explain the nature of the crisis and felt already up against a wall. The association could award merits, not money, and Lith had no use for them. The knowledge he sought needed the approval of both the army and the association. He had already earned the necessary clearance level from the association's side, which left them with a bad hand. Merits could be traded in exchange for noble titles and their connected lands. Usually, they were the association's greatest bargain chip. Unluckily, Lith had already refused a noble title twice, so offering him one was meaningless. They couldn't afford to offer him money off the books. If exposed, the scandal would bury them for good. He doesn't care for the power balance in the kingdom. Judging from the invoice he submitted for healing innocence and how he left a dozen of people stuck in the concrete for hours, I'd say there is no better nature I can appeal to. Dorian inwardly sighed. It's time to let the dragon know we have his egg. The situation is dire. Countless lives are at stake, and if the news of it spreads, panic could make more victims than our invisible enemy. Someone is killing people for unknown reasons. We have lots of corpses, but so far we've failed to understand what's happening. If you refuse to answer, then I'll take my leave. Lith stood up, tired of hearing nonsense. We need the best diagnosticians in the kingdom. Dorian grabbed Litha's arm and felt his hostility growing. A saner man would have jumped away, but Fellhorn had no qualms putting his life on the line. That's why we have hired Professor Manohar from the White Griffin. Lith freed his arm and walked away, and Mage Verhen as his assistant. Those words froze Lith in place, and with him the mana in the room. What did you say? There was no rage in his voice, yet the room felt colder and the lights dimmed like a setting sun. Mage Tista Verhen volunteered the moment she heard about the situation. If I'm right, there is a monster hiding inside the walls of Other. If I'm wrong, we could be facing another plague. Dorian put emphasis in each of his words, yet he could tell that Lith wasn't listening. After a few seconds of awkward silence, Lith clapped his hands while a creepy smile appeared on his face. Well played. Now I only have two choices. Either I walk away, leaving my sister in the hands of an incompetent paper pusher and a madman, or I help you. I accept the job. Beware, though, because this kind of tricks only works once. Once I explain Tista how you manipulated her, I can guarantee you that neither of us will ever help the association again. Also, now I know what to ask the next time the king wants to award me with something. Lith slowly passed his thumb along his neck before slamming the door behind his back and alerting his handler he wouldn't leave Other for a while. Chapter 432. Before leaving the Mage Association, Lith collected the money they owed him for treating the people wounded during the last accident. Poor guy. It wouldn't surprise me if he was writing his last will right now. Your acting skills are impressive. Solus chuckled. Because most of what I said is true. I don't care about their problem, and unless I get properly compensated, I'll find a way to get even with them. The moment the commander ordered me to listen rather than to do something, I knew something big was going on. What I didn't expect was that they would drag Tista in this mess to force my hand. I tried twisting their arm to get a juicy reward and ended up with my own arm twisted. Whoever is behind this is going to owe me big time. Lith replied. Not Dorian. Dorian is just a mage. He hasn't the power to pull off a stunt like this. He is just obeying orders, and it's the one pulling his strings I'm after. Lith came out of the building and called his sister. Where are you? Good morning to you too, little brother. Tista replied with a radiant smile, ignoring his cold tone. I've just reached your hotel. Your room is really nice. I was expecting you would sleep in a hostel to save money, and you picked a suite instead. The trip to Other must have been a nightmare. And thanks to you the stay isn't looking good either. I'll be there shortly. He took off and reached the Swan Song less than a minute later. The moment he stepped inside, Lith was welcomed by a familiar vibe. Envy mixed with hostility. Tista, Lith said with a sigh. Whenever they traveled together, she drew a lot of attention on herself and turned most men in Litha's sworn enemies. The fact she introduced herself with his same last name without ever saying she was his sister added fuel to the fire. Even the half-pint receptionist at the front desk was outraged enough to glare at him. Lith went upstairs and found the Do Not Disturb tag hanging off the doorknob. He was about to knock, just to be safe, when a voice inside said, Come on in. Tista ran to him and hugged him tightly. Lith returned it for a second before pushing her gently away. I missed you, big sis. I missed you too, little brother. Why the angry voice earlier? She asked with a curious tone. First things first, how did you get in here? As usual. She shrugged. I told the receptionist I'm with you, and I showed him my ID. The one with my family crest and name? Now everyone will think we're married. He sat on the nearest sofa like a deadweight. That was the plan. I've yet to find a creep or a wannabe playboy that dares to bother me after seeing you. She chuckled. Fine. Now would you like to explain to me how could you let yourself be dragged in whatever is happening here? You really don't know how grave the situation is. Tista was stunned. I don't care about the situation. Well, you should. We took an oath as healers, and even if they are just fancy words to you, they mean a lot to me. After all I went through as a child, I can't stay idle while people suffer. Tista was angry at his indifference. She wanted him to be better than this. They fooled you to get my help. There isn't nothing noble in letting yourself being manipulated so easily. He replied with a snort. How stupid do you think I am? I knew what the association was after the moment they mentioned the city of Other. Then why did you accept? Lith steepled his fingers with a look that made her feel like she was his student again. For several reasons. After I received their offer, I contacted one of my classmates that lives here. He confirmed everything Mage Ren, my recruiter, told me. The city is on the verge of chaos. Every day, odd corpses are found lying around all the three rims. A lot of people have disappeared, and no one knows what happened to them. Last, but not least, rogue mages no one have ever heard about are pillaging other. The association has managed to keep things under control only because the warp gate allows for backup to arrive instantly when needed. But if whatever is happening here spreads through the merchants back to their cities, once winter begins no one will be able to help them until it's too late. So, Lith didn't bother to hide how underwhelmed he was. So, I decided I could do some good and make it worth my while. By accepting I got the chance to work together with two of the most brilliant minds of the kingdom, one of whom happens to be my always missing brother, and to join the Mage Association. 2 birds with 1 stone. Wait, I had to teach for 2 years at the White Griffin to join. Are they really that desperate? Lith had no need for merits, but maybe he could force the association to pay him in magical resources. Yes. Tista nodded. I also consulted Professor Vaster before making my demands. According to him, Archmage Court, the current chairman, has led the association to the brink of extinction. He needs a big win to stay afloat, and he needs it badly. A ravenous smile appeared on Litha's face. He didn't like the hand he had been dealt, nor the game he was been forced to play. The pot, though, looked more alluring by the second. Army's headquarters, city of Belius. Commander Barian, Litha's commanding officer and sponsor in the army, had just been reminded how dangerous it was to underestimate a cornered prey. I should have never allowed Ranger Verhen to listen to their demands. General Morn Griffin is already out for my blood. I can't let more members of the High Command turn their back on me. It would be the end of my career. He thought. The army's upper echelons were already celebrating the association's funeral when Archmage Court had thrown a monkey wrench into their plans. They were sure Lith would refuse. The association had nothing to offer him, and he wasn't the kind of man to work out of the goodness of his heart. No one expected Court would manage to recruit Manohar, nor Tista Verhen. If Court's ploy succeeded, Barian would be held accountable for that. Controlling the association would mean for the army to gain authority over the noble system and change the criteria to assign a title and the lands that came with it. The game had yet to begin, but he was already on his back foot. 2 of the major players were outside his reach, and according to their deal, Lith would be considered belonging to both factions. He was in desperate need to do damage control. Excuse me, sir. First Lieutenant Camilla Yeval has arrived. His secretary announced through the amulet. Let her in. Camilla's relationship with Lith wasn't a secret, nor it was the fact that the only one Lith was loyal to was himself. Barian knew that his poor decision had left himself exposed. She was his only chance to tip the scale in his favor. Chapter 433. Camilla had never been summoned in a commander's office except when she had been promoted from 2nd to 1st lieutenant. After years of hard work, she hoped Barian would give her an opportunity to prove her worth. I don't want to spend my life being an analyst and a handler, she thought while giving him a salute. Commander Barian was a man in his early 30s, 1.8, 5 feet 11 inches, meters tall, with pitch black hair and eyes. His pale blue uniform could resemble a high-end coat with a standing collar over pants of matching quality and color. The only distinguishing features were the commander's silver epaulets on his shoulders and the insignias above his heart. At ease, Lieutenant, Barian said while inviting her to sit down. He didn't mince words describing how bad was others' crisis, nor how important was for the army to not lose in the ongoing power play. I need someone to keep me constantly updated on the situation. Someone with the necessary sensitivity and competence to make use of every opening to bring the balance back in our favor. I can't rely on Ranger Verhen alone. He's barely able to give 3 reports a day, and I'm afraid his judgment on this matter may be compromised. I've already made the mistake of relying on second-hand information and paid the price for it. Do you think you can rise to the occasion? Of course, sir, she said with confidence, even though she wanted to puke. This isn't what I've hoped for. This is politics. The army and the association are more worried about their measuring contest than about the lives of the inhabitants of other. If I refuse, I can kiss goodbye to any future chance of being promoted. She inwardly sighed. Camilla warped from Belius to the Army's headquarters in Other. There she found a stagecoach waiting for her that went straight for the Outer Rim. "I think there is a mistake," she said to the desk sergeant accompanying her. "Shouldn't we go to the association's branch?" "No, ma'am. Our orders are to bring you to Ranger Varen's quarters. You'll be debriefed together once the rest of the team arrives." Son of a, Camilla inwardly cursed. The commander doesn't need a liaison officer with the association. He wants to exploit our relationship. Now I understand why he picked me and why that ridiculous claim about Litha's judgment being compromised. I'm just a fucking honey trap. I remember something about an academy sweetheart. Probably the association is playing the same game. I've never been so humiliated in all my life. Never before did Camilla resent the army. Her colleagues were her family, and her job as an analyst was all she had. In her head, the images of her mother and the commander overlapped. Both didn't care for her feelings or her career and were only interested in exploiting her for their ends. She wanted to cry, but aside from turning paler, her face displayed no emotion. Gods, I'm so stupid. I should have understood it earlier and turned down the offer. Now either I help the commander to manipulate Lith or I tell him the truth and risk losing my job. Albeit brief, the journey seemed to never come to an end. Camilla was torn between her sense of self-preservation and to rise above that mess by doing the right thing. When the stagecoach reached the swan song, she had yet to make her mind. "Excuse me, what room is Ranger Verhen staying in?" she asked the receptionist, a short man about Litha's age who looked at her in a funny way. "Room 201, the honeymoon suite. He is about to have lunch with his missus. Who do I have to announce?" the man replied. At those words, Camilla really had enough bullshit for one day. She ignored the receptionist's question and went straight for the suite. She knocked at the door in a frenzy to the point she almost fell forward when it was abruptly opened. "Camilla? What are you doing here?" She barely registered that Lith seemed surprised and happy to see her before all hell broke loose. Sitting on the king-size unmade bed, there was the most gorgeous woman she had ever seen. She was 1.76, 5 feet 9 inches, meters tall with waist-length auburn hair that had several shades of red. Tista's oval face and her delicate features only emphasized the perfect proportions of her curvy body. Camilla was left speechless, incapable to decide if to be angry, envious, or just hope to wake up and discover it had all been a nightmare. Oh gods, is she really that Camilla? The fairy seemed happy to see her. "Nice to meet you, Camilla. I'm Tista, Litha's sister." At those words, Camilla discovered to be able to breathe again. Her lungs were just starting to burn. "His sister? He never told me you were so." She had no idea how to put it into words without making it sound a pickup line. "Thanks." Tista giggled. "You are identical to the image he showed us. That's how I recognized you." Lith waved his arms behind Camilla's back while mouthing Tista to shut up. "Us who?" Camilla did her best to smile back and not blush. "The whole family. Our niece, Lyria, even asked if you were a princess." Lith facepalmed hard as Camilla turned beet red. Thanks," she stuttered. "So, Lith can create images of people, not only flowers?" she asked, eager to change the topic. "Flowers? Did he gift you the camellia?" Tista asked, making the situation even worse. Another facepalm ensued. "Did he really name it after me?" Both Lith and Camilla were unable to look at each other in the eyes. "Well, yes, but actually no," Tista said, trying to correct the mess she finally realized to have created. "That's how I call it because I really like your name and I think it would suit the magic flower." "Thanks, you are too kind. Can I use the bathroom for a second?" The moment Lith pointed the way, Camilla closed the door behind her and sat on the bathtub edge, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "At least he is not married," she mumbled to herself. "Smooth move," Lith whispered with a voice oozing sarcasm. "Why you didn't tell her that Mom wouldn't mind the age gap if we gave her a grandchild while you were at it?" "I'm sorry, but it's the first time since Floria that I meet your girlfriend. I got carried away," she whispered back. "For the love of, don't call her my girlfriend." Lith was fighting the urge to strangle his own sister. If she hears that, she'll dump me like a bad habit. They ordered another serving and consumed their meal in awkward silence until they received a call from Mage Fellhorn inviting them to the association's headquarters to be debriefed about the crisis with the rest of the team. Dorian led them to the morgue in the basement, where dozens of corpses occupied long lines of metal scaffolds. They belonged to people of different ages, gender, and social class. The only thing they had in common was the lack of any kind of wound. The girls gasped while Litha's attention was drawn to a familiar figure in his late 20s, with black hair and shades of silver. He was around 1.74 meters, 5 feet 9 inches, meters tall, and a slender build. He was standing near a metal stretcher, the occupant of which was covered by a heavy blanket. Professor Manohar. Lith was happy to break the silence. Nice to meet you again. How come this time you didn't disappear? Manohar attempted to answer, but someone else beat him to it. Believe me, he tried, said Journey Erna's, raising her right arm and revealing the cuffs linking the two of them. Chapter 434. I resent the use of the disappear term, Manohar said with an indignant tone. I don't run away like a spoiled brat. I simply seek the isolation a complex matter like my endless research requires. You are a spoiled brat, Journey replied as she opened the cuffs. Manohar had the habit of gesturing like a hysterical bird while he talked, almost dislocating her shoulder in result. Without constant supervision, you'd break more laws in a week than a serial killer in their whole life. You never fill your paperwork and neglect your students to pursue your own agenda. Manohar wanted to reply, but Journey scared him. He decided that shutting up and hiding behind Lith was in his best interest. I know you said that you're a fan of my work, but this is more like stalking, Lith said while giving Journey a bow. Don't flatter yourself, kid. This time I'm here for him. She laughed at the joke while pointing at Manohar. Once you geniuses find some answers, it will be my job to decide how to continue the investigation. From now on, you all work for me. Mage Fellhorn, explain to us what's really happening in other. Gladly, Dorian stepped in the middle of the room and took a deep breath to calm himself. Death and madness plagued the room, making it hard for him to decide if to find more unsettling the corpses or the living. Aside from the two young women, he had the impression to be the only human in the room. It all started a couple of months ago, when the first caravans arrived to exchange goods for food and vice versa. At first, the crime rate spiked. It's nothing alarming since others' population doubles until winter ends. Then, things escalated from the usual routine to crimes of magical nature. People with little or no magical talent turned into powerful mages and settled old scores the worst possible way. He pointed at the corpses on the metal scaffolds. The phenomenon started from the outer rim and slowly spread to the whole city. The only thing we know is that receiving those powers is a double-edged sword. It makes their wielder very dangerous, but in exchange, they die when struck by a spell. No matter the element employed, a Tier 1 spell is enough to kill them. While we were still trying to sort things up, our analysts reported that the number of missing persons had spiked as well. It took us a while to notice because most of the victims were foreigners. Once it started to happen in the inner rims of the city too, the missing person reports led us to discover that the situation was even worse than we suspected. People come into other every day. We don't know if we are looking for dozens or hundreds of kidnappings. Dorian was crestfallen, noticing the lack of reactions in the room. Tistas and Camilla's were genuinely worried, but the others seemed bored as if he had been talking about his vacations. We have been able to cover up both these issues and prevent panic from spreading, until these things started to appear. He moved near the stretcher and pulled away the blanket hiding its content. It was a corpse, but unlike the others on the scaffolds, it was completely dried up. The eye sockets were empty, the nose was replaced by 2 small holes in the skull, and the skin was so stretched that the mouth was deformed into a crazed smile. Unlike the other anomalies, this phenomenon appeared at the same time in all the rims. Also, in some cases we have witnesses, so at least we know what happened even though we have no idea of how or why. The gentleman in front of you is, or better, was Sir Rosenstern, Baronet of the Kingdom. He died in front of over 20 guests, and every one of them said the same thing. One moment, they were having an amiable conversation, and the following a blue pillar descended from the sky, enveloping him. When the pillar disappeared, he had become like this. Fascinating. Journey, Manohar, and Lith said as one while coming closer to the body. We haven't been able to identify a pattern in the timing or in the places of the alleged murders. Everything appears to be completely coincidental. Our only certainty is that whenever a blue light pillar appears, someone dies. All the victims belong to the middle class or the nobility, which makes it impossible to cover it up, especially since some of them died in front of numerous witnesses or in crowded places. Journey knew of substances capable of inducing hallucinations and venoms that could reduce the victim into a similar state, so she searched the body for puncture wounds. Lith used all of his and Solus's abilities to perform a full body scan of the corpse. The light pillar from the sky manifests when a magical beast is about to evolve. Usually it's of a golden color, while mine was silver. I've never seen a blue one. What the heck could it mean? He thought. No idea. Solus replied. There's one odd thing, though. The body is completely dry of mana. Check it with life vision. Everything on Mogar was imbued with mana. Rocks, trees, even corpses. Yet only sentient beings developed a mana core and could use magic. Ever since his first meeting with Kala, Lith's life vision was capable of perceiving the mana permeating all things in the form of a faint wind of different colors they emanated according to their nature. Green for the plants, gray for the stones, red for the animals, and black for the dead. Lith pretended to chant a spell, touched his eyelids, and activated life vision. His eyes now burning with light magic revealed that the corpses on the stretchers had no mana at all. There was no black wind. It was the most unnatural thing Lith had ever seen, a void that he couldn't even begin to understand. Even abominations were infused with mana. Manohar cast a few spells while examining the body, and after a while his eyes shone like those of a child staring at his carefully wrapped Christmas presents. The reason I called you here is to solve the mystery behind these anomalies. Our first priority is to understand what killed Sir Rosen and is still killing his peers. Dorian continued. What about the others? Camilla knew she was just a liaison officer and had no active role in the investigation. Yet she couldn't help but be outraged by such a manifest discrimination. Are their deaths less important just because they were poor or commoners? No, it's just that we have no leads. A problem that I hope our diagnosticians will be able to correct soon. Dorian said, while giving a small bow to both Lith and Manohar, even though after all the troubles he had gone through to recruit them, he felt they didn't deserve it. Cases like that of Sir Rosen are so peculiar that, according to our experts, there are only 3 possible explanations, and they are as bad as each other. Chapter 435. The first is that they were victims of an abomination. When those creatures feed, they leave behind a trail of corpses not different from the one I showed you. The second one is that we are facing a vampire. They can feed off people's emotional energies, in which case they are better known as incubus or succubus, their blood, or their very life force. A victim of the third kind of vampire would resemble Lord Stern. I'm not really convinced by this hypothesis, though, since some of the deaths happened in broad daylight. The third and the worst one is that we are against someone with the skills and the resources to employ forbidden magic right under our noses. It's a branch of magic that is universally outlawed because it requires living sacrifices to work. It allows you to break the rules of magic. You can create life, prolong your existence, become stronger, even steal a part of someone's soul. It's very risky and almost always lethal, but there are very few things you can't achieve with it. With the proper preparations, killing from a distance is hardly a problem. Dorian finished his explanation and hoped for the best. Maybe coming here wasn't a complete waste of time. I don't know who did this nor the why, but I think I know the how. Manohar said with a conceited smirk, like he was the only one with a brain in the room. Only a less competent mage than me could believe that nonsense. That's impossible. Dorian blurted out. We didn't manage to find a clue in weeks, and you're saying that with a glance you have already understood everything? Gods, you're really stupid. Manohar slapped his own face in annoyance. Even Linjo's, may the gods rest his soul, was brighter than this. No, I'm saying that I figured out what's happening, but since you'll have to explain it to that half-wit boss of yours, I'm dumbing it down for you. Ever since Balkir's attack, we have conducted thorough studies about the abominations. Vaster and I are the leading experts in the field. Even without that Eggman, I can tell you that no abomination did this. Yeah, Lith agreed. There's too much waste here. When they feed, they only leave the bones intact. Exactly. Manohar performed a few hops of joy. Lith's explanation was dumb enough for everyone to understand it. The rest of the team tried to avoid thinking about how the duo could have performed their studies on the feeding habits of such deadly creatures. As for the vampire, not only they hate daylight, but also the organs of the victims would have already started to rot. This leaves us with only one possible explanation. We are dealing with forbidden magic. That's preposterous, Dorian said in outrage. It's not. Lith shook his head. I'm no expert in forbidden magic, but this corpse is unnatural. Have you checked it with magic? Of course not. Even the light element is useless on cadavers. It would have been a waste of time. We just performed a regular search of the body and took a few samples to have them analyzed by the alchemists. You noticed? Manohar said, ignoring everything Dorian said. Dear Lith, it's a shame you left the White Griffin. We had so much fun together. Lith had a hard time considering his role as Manohar's assistant as fun. He had to substitute for the professor's lessons, fill his paperwork, leaving to him only to sign the documents, clean his messes, and take the blame for his actions whenever he lost sight of the professor. Thanks, I guess. Tista, try to reanimate it with darkness magic. He replied. Tista did as instructed, but instead of turning into an undead, the corpse regained a part of its volume. The effect lasted only for a few seconds before it returned to its previous state. This man hasn't just been killed. Somehow, they have drained every single drop of mana he had. Lith explained. Then, Manohar said, if I had to take an educated guess, I'd say that someone is sacrificing their lives to create a cursed object. It's a task that demands an enormous amount of mana and a very complex array to contain the energies released in the process. Lith wasn't convinced by the professor's theory, but he couldn't voice his doubts. He needed to see one of the blue pillars to be sure of his theory. If they really are like those that appeared during the evolution of a magical beast, then it's unlikely to be some sort of ritual. Harnessing the amount of world energy contained in a single pillar would be enough to create another black star. He thought while reviewing the cursed object's blueprints stored inside Solaspedia. Dorian quickly took a map of other and marked the spots where the desiccated corpses had been found. If there was a pattern behind their position, Lith wasn't able to find it. Even after joining the dots with lines, the resulting image reminded him more a childish doodle than a magical circle. Let's say it's the truth. Dorian sighed. What about the other corpses? What about the missing people? Manohar and Lith examined the bodies on the metal scaffolds for a minute, exchanged a few words, and then both shrugged. These are regular corpses. If you want me to discover what killed them, bring me a live specimen. Even better, bring me as many as you can. Sometimes it takes a few failures before succeeding. Manohar said, we are talking about people, not cattle. What you call failing is actually murder. Well, I can't diagnose something without a patient. Manohar clicked his tongue. This simple observation stands for both your regular corpses and your missing people. If you want me to make an omelet, give me some eggs. Before the bickering could continue, Journey stepped forward. Silence, you two. I hate to admit it, but Manohar has a point. At those words, the professor gloated. That doesn't mean we're going to kill random people. At least now we have a lead. If he is right. I always am, he said with a smirk. It would explain why the phenomenon is so recent. Forbidden magic requires more than evil thoughts and a maniacal laughter. The caravans are the perfect cover to smuggle rare ingredients inside other. Luckily, most of those substances are strictly regulated. Buying them on the black market means spending a sum that can't go unnoticed, not with dimensional magic sealed. Our best line of action is to interrogate the witnesses and dig in the life of the victims to find out if they have been chosen at random or if they befriended the wrong person. As for the other cases, I want to be notified immediately if another of those frenzied mages appear. Do not engage them unless absolutely necessary until my or Litha's arrival. We need answers, and dead men tell no tale. Chapter 436. There are 6 of us, Journey said after a head count. Usually I'd split us into groups of 2 to cover more ground without wasting time. However, she took a long look at the bizarre team she had to work with. 2 young women with no real field experience, an average mage who seemed to be more a political puppet than an asset, 2 feral monsters and human guys who didn't give a damn about the tragedy that was taking place inside the city of Other, and Manohar. She knew his personal file inside and out. Journey would need to consult a thesaurus to properly describe the god of healing. I can't take my eyes off of him, so he has to come with me, she said, cuffing Manohar to her wrist again. I'm here as Manohar's assistant. I belong in your group. Tista walked to Journey's side. I'm here as her bodyguard. I go where she goes. Lith followed suit. That's not our deal. Dorian was starting to get the royal constable's point. You are here to support the association in whatever manner we deem necessary, not for spending quality time with your family. I don't care about what you think. If I can't protect her, then our deal is off and I walk. Litha's tone didn't leave space for negotiations. The army has nothing against Ranger Verhen resuming his duty. Camilla's words put the last nail in the coffin. Dorian glared at her, well aware that her role was to make the army's best interests, even if it meant sabotaging the mission. If Lith left, the team would lose one of its only 3 real players, and there was only so much Lady Ernas could do while babysitting Manohar. Once brought outside the lab, he was only a liability for the mission, which leaves me with an oversized team and 2 political lapdogs of no use. Journey said with a sigh, making both the liaison officers turn red in embarrassment. I may have no magic power or any experience as an interrogator, but I've been a data analyst for almost 10 years. If you give me access to others' interlink, I'm confident I can provide you the information you need by the end of the day. Camilla said, referring to the magical network connecting the communication amulets to the various archives in the kingdom. Bank accounts, transfers of funds, everything that left a trail of paper could be remotely accessed through the interlink. Be they banks, merchants, or nobles, they needed to be able to explain every single dime or artifact they possessed. Otherwise, while being subjected to an investigation, everything that wasn't accounted for would be confiscated and added to the royal treasury. It was one of the many reasons royal constables were feared. Who will you report your findings first? To me or to Commander Berrien? Journey's eyes held neither trust or suspicion. She considered herself to be a good judge of character. There was only so much one could learn from a background check. Camilla's reply was to hand Lady Ernas her army's communication amulet, and then showing her civilian one, which held no contact rune related to the army besides Litha's. Journey frowned at the sight for a split second. I stand corrected. One political lapdog of no use, she said while granting Camilla's civilian communication amulet access to the interlink and her contact rune before returning both communicators to her. Either you trust someone or you don't, she replied to her surprised expression. She said it while looking at Camilla, but I'm pretty sure she was talking to me. Lith thought. Under the constable questioning gaze, Dorian could only lower his eyes in shame. I have no skills that could be of use during the investigation, he admitted. I'll remain here to coordinate the efforts to prove Professor Manohar's theory. If anything happens, I'll relay it to you. Good. Journey nodded. 4 people move faster than 6. We need to be firm but tactful, otherwise the witnesses may turtle up and slower the investigation. This means that unless you discover something strictly relevant to the case, you are forbidden to talk. At all, she said while glaring at Manohar, whose uninterrupted series of social blunders had become a legend throughout the kingdom. Can I be cuffed to Tista instead of you? Ma'am? It would at least give me something nice to look at to pass time. Manohar said. Good point. Journey's reply creeped Tista out. Lady Ernas dug inside one of her pockets, but instead of the key to the handcuffs, she took out a communication earpiece. Congratulations, kid. You have just been deputized to be my assistant too. I'll talk to the women while you'll take care of the men. Just smile a lot and repeat the words I speak to you via the earpiece. It will make our job much easier. Lith couldn't help but chuckle at Manohar's dejected expression. From healer to honey trap. This is not the career I hoped for. Tista sighed. Her words stung at Camilla's heart, reminding her of the elephant in the room only Journey and her were aware of. I can't let things fester any longer. I need to make up my mind once and for all. Career or self-respect. She walked out of the room without even saying goodbye. Between Journey's words and Camilla's reactions, Litha's paranoia was piecing together the facts. The 4 of them flew from the association to Baroness Isra's mansion. She was among the witnesses of Sir Rosen's death and one of his closest friends. The Baroness was a plump woman in her late 30s. She had red hair, green eyes, and a gentle face full of freckles that not even her makeup could completely hide. She wore a simple light green silk satin dress, emphasizing her eyes and pale skin. Like any sane person, she was nervous while facing a royal constable. Her smile was forced, and she couldn't stop wringing her hands. How can I help you, Constable Ernas? I need to hear from your voice your recollection of the events prior to Sir Rosen's death. Journey smiled, trying to make the Baroness feel more comfortable. She had even switched Manohar's cuffs to Litha's wrist before entering the house. The rattle of the chain during the questioning could easily get the suspect defensive. There isn't much to say. She twisted a fan made of an exotic bird's plumes between her hands. We were just talking, mostly gossiping about our neighbors, when suddenly a blue pillar appeared from the ceiling and plummeted on the poor Rosen. The most dreadful thing was that we were all scared to death, whereas he was smiling and giggling like when his wife accepted his marriage proposal. We told him to get out of there, but he wouldn't listen. Baronet Sog tried to grab him, but the light was as solid as a wall. There was nothing we could do. Lith and Tista roamed the room while using life vision. Several weak arrays encompassed the whole house. Even with their limited knowledge about non-combat magical formations, they couldn't find anything out of the ordinary. It was just the standard set of home defenses they had seen countless times. Chapter 437. I hate prying in a gentleman's personal life. Journey lied through her teeth, while still sounding so sincere that she would manage to sell sand in the desert. Yet we suspect that Sir Rosen's death may be related to the practice of forbidden magic. I need to know if something changed in his life recently. Maybe a new acquaintance? A new hobby? Anything at all. At the mention of the forbidden arts, even Baroness Isra's freckles turned pale. Forbidden magic was outlawed in all the countries of the Galen continent. The term usually referred to all kinds of spells or artifacts capable of altering the lives of their targets, benefiting only their caster. Examples of it were the slave collars or creating greater undead, since both would rob a living creature of their free will. It was considered the most inhumane thing a mage could do. The highest forms of forbidden magic required to use the life of others to empower spells or magical objects. Such magic could give birth to miracles, but only at the cost of many lives and posed huge risks. Forbidden magic was an unnatural process that allowed subverting the laws of magic by sacrificing vast amounts of life force and mana to upset the balance. It was very powerful, but also very volatile. One tiny mistake could turn the miracle into a nightmare, just like it had happened during the creation of the Black Star. Like any kind of magic, to perfect a single spell required several attempts, and each one of them could bring consequences comparable to a natural disaster. I know nothing of forbidden magic, and I'm sure neither did Rosen. He wasn't a perfect man, but he would have never consorted with someone capable of such a despicable thing. The Baroness squeezed her fan so hard some of the plumes fell off. Interesting. What do you mean when you say he wasn't a perfect man? Journey's tone remained amiable even while noticing the witness tensing up in realization of the slip of her tongue. Well, like most of our common circle of friends, Rosen was born in a wealthy family. He never worked a day in his life, which made him easily bored. He would seek fun in the most disparate ways, sometimes even illegal ones. Like what? Nothing much. Brothels, clandestine fights, gambling clubs. He was just a baronet. He hadn't much to spend without endangering the sources of his annuities. Interesting choice of words. So, what could he have done if he had more money? Journey pressed forward as her prey got more tangled up in her web the more she struggled. I've nothing to add. Isra stood up. Her expression was indignant because of Journey's allegation, but her eyes were terrified. Now I'd like to be left alone. I'm still mourning. As you wish, Baroness. I'd answer my questions now, if I were you. Otherwise, the next time I will not be so gentle. Journey dropped the act like a live grenade and added a sliver of killing intent to her words to emphasize her threat. The Baroness withstood the constable's glare for a second before her eyes rolled up, and she fell onto the ground with a thud. Damn, I hate it when they faint. I can't question her more aggressively without proof. Forcingly waking her up is not an option. The only silver lining is that I now have a good medical reason to have her examined. Tista, Lith, and Manohar took turns using their diagnostic spells on the unconscious noblewoman. I think she and Rosen shared more than their social circle. Tista said when she was done, I found traces of abuse of drugs and alcohol in her system, both common and magical in nature. I wouldn't be surprised if she sniffed the dust instead of sweeping it. Lith nodded in agreement. When he had used invigoration on the Baroness, he had noticed an unnatural thinning of her airways, which together with the heavy damage to her kidneys and liver told him a history of searching for fun in the wrong ways for an extended period of time. That's it. Manohar scoffed. I can tell you she has 5 years at most left. Maybe 15 if she stops abusing from today and keeps herself clean until the end of her days. How do you know it? Lith performed a second scan without finding any signs of impending death. Even death vision showed him that the Baroness was more likely to experience a violent death rather than organ failure or overdosing. A discoloration in her life force. It suffered such extensive damage to have permanently changed. Even if we cleanse her body and regenerate her organs, she may not recover. Lith used scanner, but found no trace of the discoloration Manohar had mentioned. Only after focusing on the melody of the life force, he noticed that its volume was slightly lower than usual. I guess he's not called the god of healing for nothing, he thought while they left the Baroness' house and moved to the next witnesses. Most men were so eager to impress Tista that they had no qualms in confirming the late baronet's vices. Sometimes they would incriminate themselves while trying to flaunt their knowledge of the local underworld. Journey took note of everything, but let them go. It was more useful to her letting them walk free. As soon as they realize what they have done, they will panic. I'll keep them and their communication amulets under surveillance. With a little luck, they'll lead us to whoever provides them their daily dose of fun. She had just finished talking when her communication amulet buzzed. A merchant is currently attacking the shop of her fiercest competitor. She is known to barely have a magico level of power, yet she is displaying abilities worthy of a lesser academy mage. I think. Dorian was cut short by Journey's angry voice. Save it. Just tell me where. A holographic map of other appeared from her amulet, showing both Litha's groups and the attackers' locations marked by one red dot each. They flew to their destination, finding a whole building on fire and a tall middle-aged woman with chestnut hair who was unleashing one spell after the other against everyone who attempted to put off the flames. There were several mages on the scene, but they followed Journey's orders and never retaliated. They only blocked incoming spells and helped the residents to evacuate the building. Now this is an offer you can't refuse, the woman said with a crazy laugh. One fireball for free and the second one too. The explosions caused splinters and debris to fly everywhere. The angry merchant couldn't be damaged by her own magic, but the splinters pierced her legs, face, and torso. Yet she seemed to be immune to pain. Damn, with those wounds she'll die in a few minutes, and we can't even heal her. Journey cursed. There's no time to lose. Lith, draw her attention. I need to get close to paralyze her. What about me? Manohar complained as Journey unlocked the handcuffs. I was once part of the Queen's Corps, you know. Why do I get to miss all the fun? Journey ignored him and circled around the frenzied merchant. Thank the gods, wannabe mages only know how to use one element. She inwardly sneered as Lith used fire magic to put out the flames. When she heard him chanting loudly, the woman turned around in outrage. Unfortunately, in doing so, she spotted Journey with the corner of her eye and unleashed one lightning bolt for each of her new enemies. Or not, Journey thought. Chapter 438. The lightning bolts conjured by the frenzied merchant were Tier 1 spells, but their power was on par with those produced by a Tier 3 one. Lith was far enough from the caster to not have problems dodging the attack, whereas Journey wasn't so lucky. Her Royal Constable uniform was able to tank a lot of damage before she would get seriously injured, yet she couldn't afford to get hit. It was because of her orders that no one had stopped the woman from laying waste to the building. If the target died before they captured her, it would have been all for naught. To make things worse, Journey hadn't missed that the woman had been casting spells non-stop since their arrival. If she gets me once, she'll keep attacking until I'm dead, Journey thought. She extended forward her right hand, with which she was holding in between her fingers the 3 needles she had planned to use to paralyze her target. They reacted to the incoming spell by turning into lightning rods that diverted and trapped the energy, making it harmless. Journey exploited the surprise effect to get close enough to incapacitate her enemy, but the merchant reacted so fast that her movements were almost a blur. She dodged Journey's needles and kicked her at the same time. The woman was no fighter. Her attack was sloppy and telegraphed, allowing Journey to jump back to significantly reduce the impact. The kick was still too fast to avoid and so violent that it squeezed the air out of her lungs. Lith too was in a pinch, but of a completely different kind. After extinguishing the fire, he had no idea what to do. He had countless ways of stopping the crazy merchant, but they all required him to use magic. I don't even know if I can get close without killing her. He thought. Life vision shows me that she is sucking even more world energy than the last psycho I fought. She might be able to feed on the mana I naturally emit as an awakened one and die of mana poisoning because of it. Any ideas? Violence is not an option, Solus pointed out. If 10 centimeters long blazing splinters piercing her body don't cause her any discomfort, I doubt even fractures could hinder her. I can block your mana flow, but that would mean no spirit nor fusion magic. You would be left with only your enhanced body as an asset. Lith inwardly nodded and joined the fray. Journey was one of the few persons he really liked, maybe too much. They were so similar that it almost scared him, mostly because he was afraid to end up like her, with a family of his own. Yet he didn't want to lose her, nor he wanted her relatives to experience what he had went through with Carl. They were all his friends, even Orion. The merchant saw Lithas approaching and reacted accordingly. Or at least she tried. The gap in height, training, and physique was overwhelming. Even without fusion magic, she was moving in slow motion in Lithas' eyes. His right fist struck the tip of her chin with pinpoint precision to induce a concussion that would make her faint. The hit dislocated the jaw with a snap, but the woman kept standing. Lith followed through with a liver shot with his left that would have incapacitated a man triple her size. The jaw fixed itself with another snap as the woman flexed her muscles, turning the splinters stuck in her body into deadly projectiles. Not a single drop of blood came from the open wounds, which instantly healed. Light magic too? This wasn't in any report. Journey grunted while stopping the improvised bullets with her bare hands. They were no threat to any enchanted armor, but a single stray shot was enough to kill a civilian. More like a full elemental fusion. Solus explained. No sense of pain, rapid healing, an endless supply of world energy. I don't think we can take her alive. You are right, we can't. At least by ourselves. Lith cursed at his bad luck and unleashed a barrage of attacks. He adjusted their speed to make them slow enough for the merchant to see them, but too fast to be dodged. Once she was focused on the defense, Journey closed in as silent as a ghost. She stabbed the merchant at the base of her neck with 2 needles, severing her spinal cord and making her fall limp like a puppet the strings of which had been cut. I can feel her body regenerating so fast it's rejecting my needles. I can't let go of them or we'll be back to square one. Whatever you have to do, do it now, Journey said. Solus released Lith's mana flow, allowing him to use invigoration after pretending to chant a short spell. Just as he had feared during his previous encounter with another made mage, whatever was force-feeding the woman with world energy attempted to suck his mana too. This time Lith was prepared, and true magic was all about willpower. The vortex located in the woman's mana core, and Lith fought a tug of war for his mana. He had to scan the merchant's body for anomalies while preventing his energies from reaching her core. Even with all his years of practice and the new powers his blue core granted him, it was one of the hardest things Lith had ever done. Keeping the mana from invigoration in one place long enough for it to detect something required his utmost focus. Whenever even a small sliver of mana slipped out of his control, he was forced to reclaim it and start everything from scratch. Seconds turned into minutes as the constant strain on Lith's mind and body wore him out. In normal circumstances, invigoration would constantly restore his energies. Because of the vortex, however, the world energy would get stuck between him and the merchant, unable to replenish his core. In such a situation, Lith was no different from a fake mage using a tier 5 spell. I can't do it anymore. Professor, you can give it a shot. Lith wheezed at every word. His face was pale and sweaty from the effort. Only use tier 5 spells, otherwise you'll kill her. He warned Manohar. You make no sense, kid. Why would one use lesser spells? The professor made it sound like tier 4 and below were just cantrips. The moment his hands finished performing the necessary hand signs, his expression changed. Manohar felt that something was trying to steal his mana and reacted accordingly. It wasn't his first rodeo, but he had never encountered such a fierce opponent before. Suddenly Manohar didn't look arrogant, bored, or excited. For the first time in his life, the god of healing couldn't even afford to have a stray thought. What usually came natural to him to the point of being trivial was now a demanding task. How long do you need? I'm getting tired. Journey's muscles were sore from the constant strain. Tista would have liked to give her some life force, but she knew her spell would be disrupted before it could do any good. "Don't worry, I'm done," Manohar said while pulling away from the woman. Journey's needles blocked her body, but her face could still move. It turned into a mask of horror and pain as the professor pulled out a yellow sphere from her abdomen, killing her on the spot. Chapter 439. Did he just rip her mana core out of her body? Lith asked, incapable to believe his own eyes. Yes, I mean no. Solus didn't know how to reply. Pick one, damn it. No, he didn't. Her core was orange, not yellow. What's terrifying is that after locating the substance that generated the vortex, Manohar exploited its effects to move it all in the same spot before extracting it. What we have just seen was him collecting the vortex after enveloping it in several layers of life force and mana. The sphere is not her core, but it resembles it because it's made of that poor woman's life essences. Did you just kill her? Journey had no idea what had happened, yet she knew that whatever was the answer, she wasn't going to like it. Of course, because of these stupid arrays, I couldn't store the sample inside my dimensional amulet. The next best thing was to collect the sample together with enough life force to prevent it from degrading, and that's what I did. Manohar shrugged. A sample of what? Journey asked. Good question. There was something inside her body that allowed her to absorb mana. That's why she could cast so many spells, and why those like her die when struck by a spell. It's just mana poisoning. He explained. Was it really necessary to kill her? I was hoping to capture her alive and have her tell us how she gained her powers. It would have been a waste of time. Manohar objected. Her body was about to collapse from mana overload. This way at least we obtained something more than the ramblings of dying woman. What if we arrived here earlier? Would you have been able to save her then? She asked to both Manohar and Lith. Lith shook his head. He had been barely able to identify the presence of a foreign substance in the woman's system before almost collapsing. Not yet. Contrary to everyone's expectation, Manohar's usual unwavering confidence seemed to have taken a day off. I don't know if this is the result of a spell, an artifact, or alchemy, he said, pointing at the glowing sphere floating above his left hand. What I'm certain of is that, after studying the sample, I'll be able to find a solution. Lady Erna sighed while looking at the remains of the burned building. They had risked so much and obtained scraps in return. Let's call it a day. You go back to the association and find out what the heck we are dealing with. Until then, I'll instruct the city guards on how to deal with the made mages in case another attack happens. Lith, Tista, and Manohar did as instructed. With a new toy at hand, Manohar wouldn't leave his lab until he found a solution to the enigma. They spent the rest of the afternoon studying the sample. There wasn't enough to conduct a complete analysis, but what they found was disturbing at best. The magical components of the unknown substance were all too degraded to be recognized. All but one. A small piece of human tissue that was able to grow as long as it was able to feed on mana. Fascinating. This is indeed forbidden magic, just as I predicted, Manohar said while placing it inside a locked array, isolating it from the world energy. The specimen was surrounded by mana crystals that would provide it enough energy to live, but not enough to grow. Please. You also said that it was about a cursed object. Whatever that is, it's not an object. Tista mocked him. Maybe I'm wrong. Manohar pronounced the last word as if it was the worst insult he had ever heard. And maybe not. We'll resume tomorrow. He would have liked to continue, but he couldn't afford to be late for curfew. Journey didn't trust him enough to leave him unsupervised and alone with such a potentially dangerous specimen. Once Tista and Lith left for dinner, he was forced to leave the lab as well. By the way, why you didn't buy a tent for your travels? That way you could always sleep, mana geyser or not. That or maybe you could make yourself an artifact. Tista asked. I wish it was that simple. Lith sighed. I'm paranoid, so forgive me if a wall made of cloth doesn't make me feel safe. I could set up an array, but my knowledge about non-combat formations is limited. Even if I learned one, to make it last a whole night, I would need a lot of mana crystals. Otherwise, it would crumble after a few hits. Don't let me start it about an artifact. The best I can do right now is replicating my own equipment. I lack the knowledge and the experience necessary for realizing such a thing. I might as well throw my money into the gutter. It would be much quicker, and I'd obtain the same results. Do you think Camilla will be angry because of my babbling? I kind of messed up big time this morning. You sure did. Lith's tone turned sour. After dinner, Tista went to sleep in her own room, while Lith decided to stay up. He was a bit worried since Camilla had yet to arrive, and he knew that something was wrong. Even with all of Tista's blunders, Camilla had been too tense and distant compared to her usual self. It was only an hour later that she finally returned to the hotel. Her smile was forced, and she looked like she was close to exhaustion. "Do you want to order something for dinner?" Lith had a vague idea about what was happening, but didn't want to pressure her to talk. "Yes, please. I'm starving," she replied without looking him in the eyes. They spent the time before and during her meal making small talk about how they had spent their day. Lith avoided mentioning the dead woman or the living tissue since the mood was already gloom as it was. "I don't think there is a nice way to put this, so I'll just say it," Camilla said while Lith poured her a cup of tea. The nicer he was to her, the worse she felt. "I think we should slow down things a bit. Maybe take a bit of time to think about our relationship. Is it okay with you?" she said in one breath, trying to relieve the burden she felt oppressing her chest. "Absolutely not." Lith blurted out a bit too fast for his own liking. "I mean, I'll respect whatever decision you'll take, but why? Is it because of what Tista said?" "No, of course not." She chuckled while remembering that silly conversation. Both her smile and her laugh made Lith sigh in relief. "Then why?" "It's complicated." She had spent every minute she was away from her desk trying to make up her mind, but to no avail. Complicated as in, I don't want to talk about it. Or more like, I don't know what to do. Lith hated riddles. He preferred to be blunt rather than to be left hanging. "Both," Camilla replied, not knowing what to say. Chapter 440. Lith pondered for a while, thinking about why Camilla would have had such a change of heart so quickly. He remembered that she had never explained why she had been sent to him. His only real clues were Journey's words about trusting Camilla and how she had reacted to them. "I'm aware we've known each other for barely 2 weeks, and that you have no real reason to trust me," Lith said. "So, if you need some space because something happened in your personal life, just tell me, and I will not pry any further. Yet if someone from the army is pressuring you about our relationship, then I think I have the right to know. Because it wouldn't be just your problem, but our problem. You shouldn't be forced to shoulder such a burden alone. Whatever this is about, know that I'll not be part of your life unless you want me to be." Litha's words struck a nerve. Camilla's eyes wandered around the room, almost hoping she would receive a sign from the heavens, or at least find a way out of her predicament. She stared at the door for a second before looking him in the eyes. "I can't run away from my problems forever," she thought. "If I'm right and Commander Barrion sent me here as his pawn, I should have been nice to Lith, smiled a lot, and even slept with him to further the commander's agenda. That's not who I want to be, nor how I want to make my way up the army's ranks. Maybe Lith isn't as good as he appears, but at least he has been honest so far. If I have to live like a puppet, I might as well have never run away from my family. I won't sell my dignity out of fear. I owe myself that much." Camilla did her best not to tremble as she told him about her conversation with Barrion before being dispatched to other. Yet she failed. She was in an impossible situation where she had been forced to either lose her job, which had been the only safe harbor in her life, or herself. Lith listened without saying a word nor trying to comfort her. "So now I'm screwed no matter what I do. If I put any distance between us, the commander will understand I'm not playing ball and punish me. If I stay with you, I will always ask myself if I'm doing it because I want to give us a chance or just because I'm too afraid to disobey." She didn't cry, and her voice remained firm. Yet seeing her anguish made Lith feel some guilt, but mostly, he was angry. He took a few deep breaths to calm down and assess the situation with solace. Only then did he tell her about the dead woman, the living tissue sample, and his doubts about Manohar's theory. "Why are you telling me all this?" she asked. "Because it's what I would have told you anyway as my handler. I didn't mention it before only because I noticed that the woman I hope will become my girlfriend was feeling down, and I didn't want to spoil her dinner with gory details." He replied, "I didn't mean to hide anything from you. I know how important your job is to you. Maybe you should wear a double-sided name tag, so I know when I'm talking with Camilla and when I'm talking to my handler." He smiled at his own joke. "Thanks, I'll think about it." Her lips curved up into a light smile as he placed one hand above her shoulder. She grabbed it, appreciating its warmth. At that moment, she was grateful for many things. To Lith for not getting angry with her, for continuing to talk about them in the present tense instead of the past, and for just being there for her instead of making promises he couldn't keep. It wasn't much, but at the moment it was all she had. Most of all, Camilla was grateful to herself for finding the courage to do the right thing. Her future was still scary, but no matter what would happen, she would be able to face it head-on. The next morning, Camilla and Lith woke up almost at the same time. The suite had more than one bedroom, which allowed them to sleep separately. With my luck, it's only a matter of time before stuff starts to blow up in my face. I need to rest every night so that invigoration retains its maximum efficiency, he thought. I keep thinking about that thing Manohar found inside the maid mage. Solus tried to keep his mind off Camilla's situation. She could easily relate to Litha's feelings. Both of them carried a deep sadness inside that was only aggravated by the constant feelings of isolation haunting them. Lith because of all of his secrets, Solus because she had no life of her own. Over time, it had become as much a part of their bodies as the mana that flowed through them. Why give someone magical powers, especially if they would be equally dangerous to their user as they are to those around them? To Solus, Lith replied, "Off the top of my head, to create chaos, to give birth to artificial awakened ones, or to test a forbidden spell on lab rats before using it on yourself. It's what I would do." The discussion had just gone from theoretical to disturbing in less than 1 second. Solus knew all too well how serious Lith was when talking about such things. In his mind, he was now killing Barian over and over for messing with his life. Luckily, before his vivid imagination could direct a full slasher movie, Tista knocked on the door. "Sorry to bother you, guys, but with all the disgusting things that happened yesterday, I either need some company or I need to skip breakfast. Between old creeps and Manohar, my poor stomach is still doing flips." She noticed that both beds were unmade. "How is my favorite mistress? I could have used some of your dazzling smiles my brother is always talking about yesterday." Tista had no idea what was wrong between them. A slight sense of guilt made her attempt to remedy her previous blunders. "What do you mean, mistress?" Camilla chuckled. She was happy to have some company. Being alone with Lith was a bit awkward between what had happened and what hadn't happened last night. He had agreed to let her sleep in the suite to not alert Barian that she wasn't going to play by his rules and give her some time to think. Tista explained to her how she usually deceived people into believing that she was Litha's wife to avoid being bothered. Some are brave enough to face a brother's glare, but a husband is much scarier. She winked. "So, to keep the masquerade going, I booked my room under your name, and now the hotel staff thinks you are his mistress. You charging in here made quite an impression yesterday." Camilla blushed a little and laughed heartily. "Oh gods, that's why the receptionist looked at me funnily. Tista sure has a talent for embarrassing me." Yet the more time she spent with the two siblings, the less alone she felt. Chapter 441. The group spent the morning interrogating more witnesses, but neither Journey's wits nor Tista's charm managed to find anything that could further the investigation. Embezzlement, illegal gambling, fencing, all things that would make today a field day if they weren't completely irrelevant for the task at hand. Journey cursed in frustration. To add insult to injury, no maid mage had appeared since they had defeated the merchant the previous day. It left them with only one shot at cracking the mystery behind the specimens still stored inside the quarantine array. "Did you learn anything useful from that meatball?" she asked Manohar. "Many things. First, keeping it alive requires a steady supply of mana and flesh. Second, it uses part of the mana to convert the flesh it consumes into its own, and the rest gets stored somehow. Third, Lith." She cut him short, since Manohar seemed unable to understand the useful part. "Not much. We know that whoever made it is a genius, and that they employ forbidden magic. So far we have no clue about its purpose or how to track its source," he replied, making her sigh. "There isn't much we can do right now. You three get back to the lab, and please bring me good news. Mage Fellhorn and I have been summoned by Marquis Lanza, others' ruler. He doesn't seem too happy with our results. Did he really expect us to solve the case in one day? Why not also demand that we turn hay into gold while he is at it?" Tista said sarcastically. Before our arrival, he was the one the crown held accountable for the ongoing crisis. I guess the old coot is eager to put the blame on us and wash his hands of the problem. Keep me posted, I'll do the same. Once they reached the Marquis office, both Journey and Dorian had a clear idea of what to expect. "So much for your experts, Fellhorn. In less than 24 hours they managed to ruin months of my hard work. The crown will be informed of it, and believe me, they will not be pleased. Lanza said while smoothing his black mustaches. The Marquis was a man in his late 50s, around 1.67 meters, 5 feet 6 inches, tall, with graying black hair and a wide belly that was a testament to his love for good food. Despite the cold weather and an open window, he was sweating profusely. His vast amount of excess body fat helped Lady Erna's to make up her mind. Today I'll have roasted pork for lunch, she thought while pondering which side dish was better suited for her meal, while she pretended to listen to his rants. At least while I supervised the investigation, the collateral damage while handling the maid mages was minimal. You allowed a single one to burn down a whole building in broad daylight. Do you have any idea how many lives you have destroyed? Or the panic you have caused? He lied through his teeth. Maid mages had done plenty of damage already, and their victims' body count had reached the double digits. The only differences with the Marquis' crisis management were that the maid mages would die at the first spell, and the victims would be forced into silence. Winter is coming, and I have 6 families that have lost everything, without even a place to live. Merchants came to me claiming the fire has destroyed hundreds of silver coins worth of merchandise. Who is going to pay for that? The Marquis' voice was outraged, but his grin told another story. The bigger their failure, the more negligible mine will appear in comparison. He thought. The association will cover all the expenses. Dorian said with a nod of his head. I bet a good part of that money will end up his pockets. Was what he actually thought. It's the least you can do. The Marquis said. Your incompetence has caused incalculable losses to others' establishments. Now everyone knows about maid mages. People are so scared that they prefer to stay at home all day rather than risk their lives. Even my poor Minna had to cancel the weekly gala we host in our home because not one of our friends is willing to attend. I know you are upset, Father, but you're being unfair to these people. Minna walked into the room, followed closely by a housemaid. She was a stunning young woman in her early 20s, with light chestnut hair and blue eyes. Minna was as tall as her father, wearing a skin-tight yellow evening dress that emphasized her soft curves. What the heck? Minna's arrival interrupted Journey's internal debate about the best-suited wine to accompany her lunch. They seemed like they were pulled out of the Beauty and the Pig fable. The only reasonable explanation is that she is adopted. Between people going missing on a daily basis and the blue pillars reaping our peers, most of the members of our social circle left other weeks ago. Even our friends don't trust your skills. Mage Fellhorn deserves the benefit of the doubt. Minna said with an angry tone. Definitely adopted, Journey thought. But Pumpkin. The Marquis turned beet red from embarrassment. No buts, Father. Have you told them about Count Zolver? She cut him short. No, he didn't. Why do you think he should have? Journey asked. Count Zolver is a lunatic. He is the only one in his family that was born without a shred of magic power. He's always been obsessed with the dream of becoming as powerful as his siblings. He wasted a small fortune to pay mages, alchemists, and every charlatan that promised him they could boost his talent for magic. When I heard about common people suddenly turning into powerful mages, he was the first suspect that came to my mind. Yet my father never listened to me because the Zolver household is among his most loyal retainers. Watch your mouth, young miss. The Marquis seemed to have regained his spunk. I will not allow you to berate your father or our dear friends solely because you have no pity for an unfortunate gentleman. Go to your room, now. Minna and the housemaid left the Marquis office, but not before the young lady accidentally bumped into the Marquis desk and spilled an inkwell over his documents. Hours of hard work were gone in an instant, and so was Minna. Journey and Dorian ignored Lanza's desperate pleas for help and followed the young miss outside the office to obtain more details about the Count. Meanwhile, in the Mage Association's underground lab, the 3 healers kept studying the living tissue. The moment they had removed it from the quarantine array, it had resumed its growth. It kept getting bigger with each piece of game they were forced to feed it while they performed their tests. I think it would be a good idea to seal it again, Tista said. Its growth rate is much faster than yesterday. Something is very wrong. Nonsense, Manohar replied. The more specimen we have, the more experiments we can perform. Without a host, this thing is powerless. A good healer is always cautious, but never afraid of the unknown. Just as Manohar had finished talking, the living tissue that now was as big as a small dog started to writhe and twist until it assumed a humanoid shape made only of veins and muscles. Of the unknown. Its pseudo-mouth echoed with a voice that sounded identical to the professor's. While Manohar performed a Tier 5 spell at breakneck speed to place the sample back inside the quarantine array, the living tissue shape-shifted again. Chapter 442. The new form the living tissue had assumed was that of a featureless human head with a slender neck which ended with the outline of a left shoulder. It would have reminded Lith of a broken mannequin if it weren't for its glowing blue eyes. "This is bad," he said. "I can't be sure of it, but the only time I've seen blue eyes was during necromancy classes. If I'm right and the principle is the same, we're being watched." The head's lips curled into a smile, confirming Lith's suspicions. Manohar had completed his spell, but nothing happened. Fascinating. Remote control despite the association's arrays. The professor took the enchanted tray the specimen was set upon, to seal it inside the quarantine array again. Suddenly, thin tendrils of flesh emerged from the severed neck and shoulder, wrapping around his arms. Nothing happened again, and Manohar grinned at the thing's surprised expression. The tendrils let go of his arms and went straight for his face, but a thin barrier of light surrounding Manohar prevented them from touching his skin. "As I said, without a host you are powerless. You're not the first pest I've faced. I was just testing the limits of this form of yours. You really are just as annoying and arrogant as they say you are." The head replied with a soft, feminine voice that was identical to Tista's. "Let's see how you respond to this." Tista and Lith stepped back while pretending to cast a fake magic spell. Manohar, on the other hand, didn't budge. "You're just wasting my time. The door is closed. I've protected the three of us, and I'll not let my specimen die. You, please, Professor, let go of me. Help. Somebody help me." The face screamed with a terrified, crying voice. As usual, Tista had made quite an impression on the mages standing guard outside the lab, just as Manohar did for completely different reasons. As soon as they heard Tista screaming for help, they assumed the worst and opened the door while calling for reinforcements. "Told you he is a creep. You owe me 20 copper coins," Mage Traywan said to his partner, Mage Asa. "Close the door, you dimwits. Can't you see I'm busy?" Manohar yelled in outrage. The thing had shape-shifted again, assuming Tista's features and melting the half of the face not exposed to the guards. The melted flesh formed a naked shoulder and a part of an arm. Its tendrils were still clinging to Manohar's body despite his best efforts to get free of the living tissue without damaging the specimen. So what the guard saw was a half-naked young woman whose body was covered by the professor's ample robe screaming for help. "Help me. He tried to rape me." The head sobbed, sending the two guards into a frenzy. They didn't even notice the real Tista standing a few meters back staring in horror at her doppelganger. Nice try, but no one is dumb enough to believe. Manohar was cut short by two massive high-pressured wind blows that sent him crashing against a nearby column and made him lose consciousness. It was the Tier Tree Soft Blast, a non-lethal air magic spell devised in case of hostage situations. It all happened so fast that Tista and Lith barely had any time to react. The head sprung from Manohar's body and bolted toward the now-shocked guards. Lith attempted to catch it with spirit magic while Tista conjured a 10 centimeters, 4-inch, thick wall of earth to stop its advance. As soon as it perceived the pressure from the mana tendrils, the thing split itself into smaller pieces to escape from them and charged toward the barrier. The smaller bits remained stuck inside Tista's spell, but the impact created several cracks and weakened its structure enough to allow the two biggest fragments to reach the other side of the wall. How the heck can they be so powerful? Lith thought while staring in awe at the broken barrier. That thing is full to the brim with world energy. The merchant first and our experiments later allowed it to feed to its heart content. Do you remember Manohar's words? Half the mana was stored all along. Solus explained. Tista didn't waste time and made the wall implode, destroying all the fragments still stuck inside it and clearing their line of sight all at once. Sadly, it was too late. The living tissue had turned the mages into its hosts and was merging the two bodies into one. Fuck. We can kiss our specimen goodbye. Lith cursed the unknown enemy. That thing made a magico as strong as a mage. I can't afford to discover what it can do to someone with a decent core. The guards both had bright green cores. Solus thought. I have no idea how two mana cores in one body will interact, but based on what happened earlier, it should be like fighting a blue cord mage. Tista, I'll hit high, you hit low we must. In the heat of the battle, Lith had completely forgotten that his sister had never seen an abomination, one of Balkir's undead, or any of the monstrosities which had been his bread and butter for years. Tista was pale as a ghost, incapable of averting her gaze from the bodies of the two mages as they were twisted inside out. Their bones snapped and merged, forming thicker limbs. Their flesh writhed and bulged, spurting blood whenever a blood vessel proved incapable of sustaining the increased pressure, just to be mended a split second later. Lith looked at Manohar, still on the floor with a small pool of blood forming under his head. "We don't have much time left," said the left head using Lith's own voice. "Let's play," said the right one, accomplishing the unbelievable task of making Manohar's voice even more annoying. "Count Lanza's mansion. Your allegations could put Count Zolver in some serious trouble. What makes you so certain that he could be the one behind the maid mages?" Journey asked. "You don't know him like I do." Even if the corridor outside her father's office was pleasantly warm, Minna Lanza shivered while recalling their shared past. Arik has always been envious of anyone capable of lighting a fire without matches. He's not just talentless, he can't even use chore magic. Over the years, envy turned into hate. It's gotten to the point that he has forbidden his staff to use magic. The last time I visited him, Arik almost whipped a butler to death for conjuring a glass of water. Her beautiful blue eyes turned watery. He was yelling like a lunatic, babbling about restoring his honor. He had a feverish look in his eyes, like he'd become insane. "Thanks for your help. I assure you will pay Arik Zolver a visit," Journey said. At those words, Minna gave them a curtsy with a look full of gratitude before taking her leave. The housemaid accompanying Minna hesitated before following her ladyship. Journey hadn't missed how the housemaid had kept staring at her constable badge during the whole conversation, nor that she had bitten her lower lip more than once to stop herself from speaking. Lady Ernest caught up with her before she could disappear around the corner and grabbed her by the shoulder. "Is there anything you would like to add, miss?" Journey asked. The housemaid turned around nervously, making sure no one was in sight before answering. "Please, don't listen to the Marquis. He's only telling you half of the story." Chapter 443. The housemaid introduced herself as Hessie from Namur. She was a plump woman in her mid-40s, with brown hair and eyes of the same color. Her maid uniform covered her from neck to toes. It consisted of a black dress with a full skirt and a white smock apron. "I'm Lady Lanza's personal maid. It's my duty to serve and follow her." Hessie had a high-pitched voice, which fear made it sound almost childish despite her age. Her ladyship and her father have quarreled several times because he has falsified the numbers of missing people for months before the association took charge of the problem. That would explain why we underestimated the seriousness of the situation until it was too late, Dorian pondered. This information may help us to incriminate him later, but right now we have other priorities. "I'm really sorry." His eyes were sincere and he meant those words, but there was nothing he could do. "No, you don't understand. The problem's not only that people disappear, but also that some come back." Hessie's eyes dilated from fear. Her voice trembled to the point she started stuttering. "One of my neighbors, Mr. Rosa, went missing a month ago. He returned a week later, saying he had left other for a job he had been hired to do. Yet he wore the same clothes that he disappeared in, and he was as broke as the day he left. I'm sorry, but I fail to see the relevance of your neighbor to our investigation," Journey said with a kind tone. "I know this will sound crazy." Hessie's stuttering got even worse. "But ever since people started going missing, everyone in my neighborhood is afraid to leave their homes late at night. Odd folks with glowing blue eyes walk around the streets. Once, I watched outside my window, and I noticed several of them moving towards the old temple. I could swear that Mr. Rosa was among them." Journey took note of everything Hessie said just to be polite and reassured her they would look into it. The housemaid gave them a deep bow and left in a hurry to catch up with Minna. "Have you heard this nonsense before?" Journey asked Dorian once they left the Lanza household. "Many times." He nodded. "It's related to an old legend about a necromancer that would send his revenants to capture people for his experiments. Whenever there is a drought, a bad harvest, or even a harsh winter, the people of others start claiming that blue-eyed creatures are responsible. Suddenly, their communication amulets received a call at the same time. According to Dorian's secretary, there was something wrong with the underground lab. Unlike Trias, the thing didn't wait to be fully formed before attacking. As soon as it finished its taunt, the creature jumped toward Lith with a maniacal laughter. At the moment, it was a humanoid skinless creature, about 2 meters, 7 foot, tall with 2 heads, 4 arms, and 2 legs. The flesh and muscles were laid bare as they rearranged themselves to fit the new body. Veins as thick as a finger ran from its exposed twin hearts to its 6 limbs. They pulsed with a steady rhythm despite the frenzied assault the creature was performing. Its first set of arms was human-like, while the second one had been fused with part of the legs of the second guard. The result was a pair of deformed arms coming out of the creature's shoulders that ended in hands as big as coffee tables. Each hand only had 3 fingers that resembled the talons of a huge bird of prey. Thanks to life vision, Lith could see that, just like a made mage, the creature was now generating a vortex to suck all the world energy from its surroundings. Idiot! He inwardly sneered while conjuring a stone pillar from the ground, which struck the creature while it was still in midair. The vortex can grant you endless mana, but it also absorbs mine. One spell is all that it takes to kill you by poisoning your core. No, not really. Solus pointed out. The moment you cast your spell, the vortex disappeared. Whoever is controlling that creature can switch the vortex on and off at will. The creature ripped the pillar off the ground with its deformed arms and used it as a mace, trying to squash Lith. Tista, snap out of it, he yelled while dodging with a roll. The pillar came down, smashing the table full of expensive equipment they had used until a minute ago. Shards of wood, glass, and stone flew across the room. If not for their enchanted armors, only Lith would have survived the rain of deadly projectiles thanks to his enhanced physique. Tista only felt a prick on her skin, but it was enough to make her regain her cool. Hang on, She tried to speak, but Lith interrupted her. Watch out. Remember the eyes and watch out for its chanting. Why my first monster has to be this hard? Tista cursed her bad luck. I must always pretend to chant and use hand signs because even if we kill it, the puppeteer will survive. I can't blow up our cover. The creature split what was left of the pillar in half. The room was too small for such a huge weapon. A simple earth spell turned the rocks into clubs, which the creature swung around, displaying a level of mastery that sent shivers down Lith's spine. One mouth kept laughing as the other one was chanting a spell, while the human-like arms performed the hand signs. The silver lining of this nightmare is that at least we are not fighting an awakened one. Lith thought, wielding the gatekeeper with one hand while performing hand signs with the other one. A mage knight. The first head stopped laughing from surprise. That wasn't in your file. Lith didn't bother replying and charged forward instead. The Night Mage Tier 4 spell, Full Guard, enveloped his body with a spherical blue aura with a radius of 1.65 meters, 5.41 feet. Thanks to Full Guard, he had no blind spots. Whatever entered the sphere would be detected, allowing Lith to strike and dodge without looking. I can't use fusion magic, whereas with its 4 arms Mr. Carpenter here has no trouble casting and fighting at the same time. I need all the advantages I can get. Lith thought. Even if the situation was dire, Lith's name of choice for the creature made Solus chuckle. You are insane. You know that, right? She said while using all of her senses to find a way to quickly kill the carpenter. I would have died years ago if I was any saner. Lith replied as he also conjured a tower shield made of ice and earth to block the enemy's Tier 4 lightning spell. Mage Knight's spells only required one hand and had a short cast time compared to other specializations. Their major downside was the very short area of effect, but in such an enclosed space, it didn't matter. Lith had trained with Floria countless times. He knew the basic spells of her specialization like the back of his hand. The carpenter's left arm tried to block his advance, but Lith needed just a thought to send the tower shield intercepting the attack. The right arm swung its club with inhuman speed as the left one swatted the shield like a fly, shattering it into frozen pebbles. Lith managed to dodge by a hair's breadth, but was quickly forced on defense. The carpenter roared in triumph while it was driving Lith into a corner with its superior physical prowess and technique. The creature would finish him as soon as its next spell was ready. Chapter 444. While dodging the club's swings that were raining on him non-stop, Lith still couldn't believe how things had escalated quickly. When the specimen had proved to be able to shape-shift, he had prepared contingency spells to restrain or contain it, not kill it. It was their only lead, and it was seemingly harmless. It could change its appearance, but not create weapons nor use magic, which together with Manohar's light barrier's protection made it nothing more than a creepy talking head. Lith had hoped that whoever was controlling the flesh puppet would say something that he could use to find the real source of the made mages. He would have never expected the guards to believe that something could happen to Tista on his watch, nor that Manohar could be so arrogant to not have prepared any kind of protection for himself. Lith had seen the professor ready another spell, but Manohar had been so focused on the specimen to not even glance at the wannabe heroes. Human stupidity never ceases to amaze me, he thought while rolling under one of the deformed arms and striking with the gatekeeper at the human hands, disrupting the spell. Its behavior doesn't make sense. Solus was dumbfounded as well. If its aim was destroying the specimen, then it could have just self-destructed. If it wanted to escape, why ignore the open door? What does it gain by fighting us? Lith was too busy avoiding to get cornered to even try to find a proper answer. The creature was physically stronger than him, and its fighting skills were better than most of his instructors demonstrated when he had trained in the army. If this person is so good while controlling a makeshift body that wields improvised weapons, I don't think I could win against their real body without going all out. Meanwhile, Tista had finished healing Manohar and was waiting for the right moment to strike. Her eyes were brimming with mana because of life vision. Why it doesn't activate the vortex? She thought. Lith can't focus on a spell as long they are so close, but I can. Spirit magic is invisible to fake mages, and I've conjured enough to kill it in one go. Without the vortex, though, it would just give it a strong blow and reveal our ace in the hole. Much to everyone's surprise, the carpenter was getting weaker by the second. Most of the accumulated mana was spent, and a green core couldn't sustain its abilities for long, not without the vortex's boost. Before attacking, the creature said something about not having much time left. Maybe the vortex has some limitations we are still unaware of. Solus pondered. Lith grunted as he deflected the stone club coming from his left. He then raised the gatekeeper while switching to a two-handed grip before chopping off the deformed hand at the wrist level. The carpenter's movements were getting sluggish. It tried to reattach the hand with tendrils of flesh, but the darkness magic the gatekeeper was infused with was corrupting the hand faster than the creature could regenerate it. Seems I have underestimated you a bit, the creature said with Manohar's voice while taking several steps back. Both heads were wheezing, gasping for air. Lith didn't let it get away. He kept close to the creature while swinging the gatekeeper. With its only arm left, the carpenter couldn't keep up with him. The bastard sword was infused with darkness magic, and with each hit the creature's vitality dwindled. Yet its mouths continued grinning. The vortex reappeared, sucking all the world energy in its surroundings and filling the carpenter with new energy. Its wounds closed. Even the stump started regrowing a new hand. Tista unleashed all the spirit magic she had accumulated while Lith stepped back and conjured some of his own. The carpenter's heads kept their eyes on the siblings, ready to shut down the vortex the moment they cast a spell or activated a magic ring. Yet nothing happened. How disappointing. They are both frozen in terror. This has been a waste of. The creature's train of thought was cut short by a massive amount of foreign mana flooding its system. The carpenter stopped the vortex, but it was too late. Lithas could only produce filaments on such short notice, but Tista's spirit magic had been densely packed. Her mana reached the creature's green core, degrading it quickly to yellow and then to orange. The carpenter laughed despite the pain, still looking around for the source of the attack. Brilliant. I didn't even notice you setting up this trap. The creature while staring at Tista. Too bad it's not enough. The carpenter reactivated the vortex, uncaring of the consequences. The moment Solus informed Lith that the creature's core was down to red, he resumed his attack. Even under the effect of mana poisoning, the creature's muscles were still growing, its wounds healing. Lith unleashed all of his rings, and the creature sucked the spells just as he expected. Gray and fading now. Solus gave him his cue. The moment the carpenter's eyes stopped glowing, Lith used fire, air, and water fusion on himself with all the strength that had left. His movements turned into a blur, Each slash was perfectly chained to the following one with no delay, thanks to water fusion. Lith was like a human blender. Even Tista couldn't follow the gatekeeper's speed. The only thing she could see was a flash of light each time a part of the carpenter flew away. First, Lith decapitated both heads with a horizontal slash while jumping. Then, he adjusted the blade's angle, and while falling down he amputated the creature's right arms. The moment Lith touched the floor, he changed stance again. He pivoted on his feet, chopping both legs at once while spinning on himself. Lastly, he used the momentum for removing the left arms with an upward slash as he returned facing the creature. When the second green core went online, the carpenter was still full to the brim with mana. Unluckily, being limbless, it could do nothing as Lith stabbed the chest and flooded it with darkness magic until it turned to dust. 2 assimilated guards, hence 2 cores. He explained to Tista's disgusted look. Rule number 1. Never stop until the monster is. He was about to wipe out the carpenter's remains when a blue pillar descended from the sky and pushed him away, like he was just a speck of dust. Under their astonished gazes, the pillar enveloped their enemy and sucked away all the mana it contained. What the heck? This isn't at all like when a magical beast evolves, nor like when I refined the blue mana core. It feels empty, like Kaduria after I destroyed the Black Star. Could it be? Litha's reasoning was interrupted by several mages storm the lab. What they saw was a bloodbath where the living tissue had assimilated the guards, Manohar lying unconscious on the ground in a pool of his own blood, and most of the lab equipment trashed. The colleagues they had come to help were nowhere to be seen, whereas Lith and Tista were standing unscathed. Nobody moves, screamed Thane, the great mage leading the backup unit. Drop the sword and get on your knees now. If you so much as to say a single word, I'll not hesitate to put you down. Chapter 445. City of Other, Unknown Location. What the heck? The one controlling the carpenter remained mildly amused, discovering that their creature was incapacitated. It takes barely more than 1 second to switch the main body after the first one becomes poisoned. The little bastard must have saved a tier 4, if not even 5, magical ring for the grand finale. Otherwise, the ranger had no way to deal that much damage in such a short amount of time. They reviewed the whole fight, assessing each team member's threat level. Playing with them was the right choice. Manohar is just as dangerous as they say he is. No one has ever managed to extract one of my puppies from its host before. I've spent a long time to make sure it's something impossible to do, yet he pulled it off at the first attempt. He even managed to neutralize its assimilation abilities after less than a day worth of study. There's no telling what he could discover if they catch another made mage, and I can't hope for the same trick to work twice. I need to find out the weak point Manohar exploited, or the next time they could stop me. Yet instead of being worried about their plan being ruined, they smiled instead. It's refreshing finally meeting a worthy opponent. Fooling constables and leading healers by the nose becomes boring after a while. He seems the kind of man that would gladly join me. I need just 2. When they noticed that the sun was about to set, they were forced to interrupt their plans and prepare for the evening. Damn it, I shouldn't have chosen this ridiculous body. Between family and servants, I have barely the time to collect mana from my puppies. My next alias will be someone inconspicuous and with much fewer responsibilities. Tista and Lith had a hard time explaining they had nothing to do with the 2 guards' disappearance. It was the first time for her seeing 2 humans die in such a gruesome way. Compared to the carpenter, even the fallen races looked cute and cuddly. As for Lith, being found with a bloodstained blade while standing right in front of a pile of ashes made him the prime suspect. Their situation improved the moment Great Mage Thane checked Manohar's condition and discovered he was fit as a fiddle. Unluckily, things took a turn for the worse when he woke up. Idiots. Because of those idiots, I've lost a unique specimen. He yelled in a temper tantrum. Not to mention your life. Lith was serving a tea spiked with a strong liquor, hoping to calm the mind of those present. Who cares about my life? I mean, I survived far worse. Manohar corrected himself once he realized he was the one they were talking about. If those incompetent fools weren't already reduced to dust, I would raise them from the dead just to have the pleasure to kill them myself. How dare you? After Manohar, Thane too spilled most of his tea. Trewan and Asa were good men. Trewan had a wife and 2 small children. They died because of your crazy research. What I'm going to say to Truan's wife. that he should have followed his colleague's example and not spread his idiocy to the future generations. Lith and Camilla took good care of Tista while the two men quarreled like children. Tista was still in shock. Even covered by multiple blankets, she kept shivering with cold. Does this kind of things happen often to you? Once the adrenaline rush from the fight had faded, she turned pale as a ghost. Gods, no. Aside from Balkier's thralls, I've never met a monster like that. If you start traveling like I do, though, sometimes you're bound to see people die. He shrugged, drawing to himself a reproachful stare from Camilla. No, he is right. Tista drank a big gulp of liquid courage. I don't plan on playing tourist. I'd rather hear the truth, scary as it may be, instead of lies that could coddle my feelings and get me killed. Soon Tista fell asleep despite the two mages yelling at each other. After Journey and Dorian returned from the Marquis house, Lith shared his doubts with them. As I told the great mage Thane, we witnessed a blue pillar. What I have left out is that, after it vanished, the surroundings were almost devoid of mana, just like Caduria after I destroyed the Black Star. If my hypothesis is right, it means that someone is stealing huge amounts of world energy, just like the Black Star did. The process is faulty, though. The vessels can hold only for a limited amount of time, after which the energy dissipates in the form of a light pillar. Are you crazy? Why did you hide such an important detail? Dorian said. Because this could mean that Manohar is right. Someone is using people to harvest mana, and only a cursed object or worse could require so many sacrifices. Lith explained, making the professor grin with pride. Thane questioned us in front of his unit. If I told him the truth, one of them might have preferred to lose his job, but save his family, and the news would leak. If people think that other is going to become the next lost city, panic will kill thousands. Also, until we don't learn what's actually happening, we can't risk spreading those critters to the rest of the kingdom. Interesting. Journey mulled over his words. Yet now I'm the one who thinks cursed objects have nothing to do with this story. Didn't you say that the creature had glowing blue eyes? Journey told them about the two new leads they had gotten from Marquis Lanzahome. I just know the basics of lesser necromancy, but I don't think this is the work of a necromancer. Lith shook his head. The vessels are all living beings, and so was the specimen. Sounds more like forbidden magic to me. Maybe the blue eyes are just the sign of a mage's will controlling their creation, and maybe not. Journey replied, I'll request the Forbidden Magic and Necromancy Department to provide us all the information available on the matter. If what Hesse told us is true, then the made mages, the blue pillars, and the missing people are all the work of the same person. Chapter 446. This is much worse than I expected. Journey paced around Dorian's office while assessing the gravity of others' predicament in the light of the most recent developments. Royal constables don't deal with mages. It's the duty of the Mage Association to prevent idiots with more power than brain from endangering the kingdom and its subjects. My problem is that if I call in the Knight's Guard without a proper cover story, panic will spread. Even if she wasn't referring to him, Dorian felt the need to justify himself anyway. I assure you that there has been no early sign of a conspiracy of this magnitude. I performed background checks on every mage that entered the city during the last months. Also, the materials necessary to build a lab need special permission to be bought. There's no record of someone applying for one in years. It's not your fault. Necromancer or not, we are dealing with someone smart enough to cover their tracks. We don't even know what is their real agenda. Based on what Lith said, made mages and blue pillars victims might be failed experiments. Even though I don't see what they could possibly achieve by giving powers to random people. But if Manohar is right, and we are dealing with the making of a cursed artifact, then only the missing people are relevant, and the rest it's just a diversion. Think about it. Small-time nobles dying in the middle of the day are bound to draw attention, and so are rogue mages bent on destruction. We need more information, and we need them fast. We don't know how close the mastermind is to bring their plan to fruition. Any ideas? We could require a copy of Brigadier General Vorga's report for the Caduria events. Camilla proposed. Lith said that the aftereffects of the Black Star and of the Blue Pillar are similar. Caduria's world energy was sealed by the arrays. Maybe after disabling them, the General noticed something that could help us understand what's happening here. Lith considered it a waste of time, but said nothing. I've never seen blue pillars before, not even after abominations absorbed small villages' worth of world energy. The phenomenon must be related to the kind of forbidden magic employed. Since we are clutching at straws, though, we might as well give it a try, he thought. Then, after pondering Journey's and Dorian's words, Camilla took out her communication amulet and started browsing through her notes. Her hands moved on the holographic interface with the grace of a pianist during a solo. Her expression was so focused that Journey stopped pacing to not disturb her work. "I knew it," she said with a warm smile that reminded Lith the reason he had asked her out the first time they had met, right after she had finished reproaching him. There was something in her disposition that made her more than sunny, almost radiant. "So far we have considered the nobles involved with the Blue Pillars as victims. But if we consider them part of a bigger scheme, then I think this could give us a lead." Camilla handed her communication amulet to Journey. The data collected showed that every victim had renovated a part of their mansions during the previous months. Some had set new arrays, others had bought new magical commodities. Taken individually, each order was inconspicuous, but once put them all together, there were more than enough magical resources to build a decent lab. "Excellent job, Lieutenant," Journey said while returning the amulet. "Do a reverse search and find me someone that fits the profile of the victims and the timeline of the purchases who is still alive. The first name I want you to check is Arik Zalver." Camilla frowned as soon as she typed the name. Count Zalver had been flagged by the Mage Association multiple times over the years, but there were no recent activities on his accounts. To Dorian, Journey said, "Damn, why didn't you check on him? He has an alchemical lab, a forge mastering lab, and at least 2 others. With all this stuff, he could be doing everything by himself." "We did. He has no magical powers, and whenever he built a lab, a certified magician worked for him. We didn't intervene because he has the means, but not the skills to use them. When the problem started, I searched his place and checked his inventories. There was nothing missing, and he hasn't hired a mage in the last 2 years. I can send another team to make sure the magical equipment is still on the place too if you want." "No, it's better to wait. We have no solid evidence he is related to this story. I can't just storm inside his house and interrogate him. Before we ask him questions, I need to know some answers," Journey replied. "While Lieutenant Yeval searches for more potential suspects, I want everyone to rest. We have to be ready if another made mage appears, and if they don't, I want to take a look around the old temple to check for glowing blue-eyed people." It took Camilla a couple of hours to complete her task. Knowing what she was looking for and the time frame for the purchase of magical materials to be relevant allowed her to narrow her research greatly. Since it was almost sundown, the group decided to scout the area where Hesse lived and make sure that her claims weren't just born out of superstition. The building called the Old Temple was one of the rare relics of the time before Magus Lacra Silverwing gifted her legacy to the Garland continent. After mages learned to perform Tier 4 and 5 magic, religions had slowly disappeared. The temple was located in the outer rim of Other, in one of the oldest and poorest parts of the city. The district was too distant from the city gates to be of any use for the merchants. The streets were narrow and the pavements were full of cracks and holes due to the lack of maintenance. Lith noticed the lack of beggars and street urchins that were common in all the other zones of the outer rim that he had visited. I wonder if it's because they got scared by the people going missing in the neighborhood, or just because the residents have nothing to worth stealing. Lith thought. The old temple belonged to Zal, the god of healing. It reminded Lith of a Greek temple. It was a simple rectangular shrine with protruding side walls, forming a small porch. The temple was composed of 2 sections. An outer space surrounded by columns, and the inner area which housed a stone altar engraved with runes belonging to a lost language and a statue of Zal. Both areas of the temple were entered and exited through ornate niches. The god was depicted as a bearded man wearing an ample robe. His right hand held a human heart, while the left one was destroyed, either by time or thieves. Is it me, or this guy resembles Ardhan, the Mad King? Lith had seen Arthan's picture more than once while researching for a cure for his reincarnation problem. The others had no idea of who Lith was talking about, and there was no time to explain to them the whole story, so they kept looking around the temple. Chapter 447. The inner area of the temple was 30 meters long and 20 meters wide. Every step the group made echoed inside the empty hall. Dust and dirt covered the statue and the altar. Even the stone benches where once believers would sit on to pray looked like nobody had touched them for months. Everything of artistic value had been stripped from the walls over time. Where once were bas-reliefs and mosaics, now there were holes with jagged edges. This is odd, Journey said after checking the side rooms. Despite the lack of maintenance, the temple is still in good shape. I would expect it to be a playground for the kids during the day and a shelter for the homeless during the night. The mages checked for secret passages with earth magic, but to no avail. Even using life vision and the array detecting spell revealed nothing. When did you find the time to learn warden magic? Journey was surprised seeing Lith scanning the place with spells belonging to different specializations. I'm not a warden. I just learned how to detect arrays and how to cast the most useful ones for combat situations. Lith had been too busy with his research to have the time to become even an amateur warden. He knew how to cast the array detecting spell because otherwise he wouldn't be able to share what he discovered with life vision, which allowed him to see all kinds of hidden magic. The only arrays he knew were the so-called impossible arrays, formations that only an awakened could cast, and which belonged to the legacies left by previous magi. After a full sweep of the temple which resulted in a bust, they split into groups of two. Journey would go with Manohar, Camilla with Tista, and Lith with Dorian. They needed to cover as much ground as possible in the little time they had left. The trick is to blend in, Journey explained while her uniform and Manohar's shape shifted into a simple cotton dress and a white shirt over brown pants respectively. Mix up with the crowd and ask normal questions. People love to gossip when given the chance. She messed up her hair to make them disheveled and applied a fine powder that made them look shaggy. Then she put makeup to her face, neck, and hands until she lost any resemblance of nobility. She even dirted her nails on purpose before doing the same to Manohar. When she finished, they looked like two daily laborers. As long as he shuts up, I'll make my way while pretending we are a married couple just arrived in town who is looking for a cheap home. It'll give us a reason to ask about the neighborhood. Don't flatter yourself, woman. Manohar scoffed. Even while looking like this, no one will ever believe that a handsome man like me would marry an old bat like you. I'm not Lith, I don't like old-timers. He said while pointing at Camilla. I'm younger than you, jerk. She replied in anger. Tista? Lith, no one in their right mind would ever believe you come from a poor upbringing, no matter how much makeup I apply to you. You have to improvise. Journey explained as she executed a knee strike on Manohar's gonads, making him double over in pain. Dorian, Camilla, usually people hate uniforms, but maybe they are desperate enough to ask for help. Pretend to patrol the streets and wait for people to talk to you. Any questions? Aside from Manohar's groans, the temple was silent. Good. Let's meet here an hour after sundown. Tista and Camilla walked for about half an hour before giving upon Journey's plan. Instead of seeking their help, people approached them to make sure they weren't lost and warned them it was a dangerous place for two young women. To Camilla, Tista asked, "Do you know first aid?" Of course. Even non-operatives have to regularly attend classes in case of emergency. Then we are set. Tista replied with a smile. They walked to the nearest clinic and introduced themselves as a healer and her assistant. The local practitioner was dubious because of Camilla's uniform, but he changed his mind as soon as he heard the work for free magic words. He provided Camilla a nurse scrubs and put them to work immediately. They followed Journey's advice, not asking any question that wasn't medically relevant. Camilla monitored the waiting room, eavesdropping the patients' conversations, while Tista listened patiently to their worries whenever someone was willing to open up. Between Litha's build and Dorian's silver uniform, they had no problems following Journey's script. At first, only a few were brave enough to approach them, but once word got out that they would deal with the requests immediately, a long line formed quickly. At first, was just small stuff. Pest infestations, minor injuries, quarrels between neighbors. Then, people started reporting them all their fear and problems. Please, my son disappeared 2 days ago. We reported it to the guards, but they barely listened, said a couple whose teenage son was gone. It's the third time my store gets robbed this month. Where are the guards when you need them? Asked an angry shopkeeper. This neighborhood is a nightmare. Between muggers, drug dealers, and all those creeps walking at night, we need to barricade ourselves in after sundown. Lith was amazed by Dorian's patience while dealing with all those people. He would let them vent as long as they needed before making a question. Lith used that time for scanning his surroundings and looking for vortexes. Even if a maid mage gets blue-eyed only when they are mind-controlled, I should be able to perceive the carriers of a meat puppet. They can't turn off that pseudo-invigoration ability. As the minutes turned into hours, Lith discovered how unsavory the bread of knowledge was. During their rounds, he noticed several individuals emanating a vortex from their mana core. They were all very small compared to those of a rampaging maid mage, but their sheer numbers were impressive. Damn, I hate being always right. How do I explain to the others what I know without mentioning life vision or ditching Dorian long enough to create a believable cover story? You can't. Solus shrugged. We need Manohar to extract the meat puppet, and if he asks you how did you diagnose it from a distance, he's not going to believe a far-fetched explanation. He knows light magic far better than you. Lith and Solus racked their brains for a solution, but when they found it, it was already too late. As soon as the sun started to disappear behind the city walls, the streets emptied, leaving him no choice but to go back empty-handed at the old temple. This is actually a blessing in disguise. Solus sounded relieved. She had found a flaw in his plan. Even if your idea may work, you were bound to fail. Knowing Journey, she has turned off their communication amulets to not blow their cover. Without Manohar's help, you might have alerted the enemy and destroyed any chance we have of taking them by surprise. We have one shot at this, we have to make it count. Chapter 448. I've talked with everyone who had a room for rent, but I didn't learn anything useful. Journey sighed. Everyone complains about the high crime rate of the neighborhood, of the people going missing on a daily basis, and only a few talked about blue-eyed people. The silver lining is that those who did always saw them near the Temple of Zhao. I have a suggestion about how to find people carrying a meat puppet, Tista said, beating Lith to the punch. I noticed that some of today's patients had a mild adverse reaction to both my diagnostic and healing spells. They all presented the same symptoms, unease and stomach ache, the same of mana poisoning victims. I think Professor Manohar could give them a look and, if I'm right, extract the puppets safely from their hosts. All gazes turned to Manohar, who didn't seem to be impressed. I discovered a few of them on my own too. I just had to use air magic the whole time we were around people and see who would suddenly feel sick after getting touched by my invisible winds. I even managed to examine a couple of carriers. The puppets were there, yes, but they were already dying on their own. Most of them were so undeveloped that they wouldn't survive the extraction process, and even if they did, I wouldn't have enough time to find a way to stabilize them. Despite the failure, the experience allowed me to collect some significant data. The carriers were both male and females, never than younger 15 years old. Some were even older. When Manohar noticed Journey's glare as he was pointing at her, he almost choked on his words. His hands quickly moved to protect his groin. I mean less young than Constable Ernest, here. I performed the same experiment as Professor Manohar, but I didn't attempt to check on the specimen to not put at risk the patient's life. Lith said. The ones I noticed, though, were mostly young. Same for me. Tista confirmed. She had been very scared at the idea of using magic on someone with a vortex in their mana core. She didn't want to harm them, but had no idea how to refuse to treat them, since the other healer would do it anyway. She had used a weak diagnostic spell first, and when she noticed that the vortex was too weak to cause mana poisoning, she had cured the patients as fast as she could. The younger the patient, the milder was their reaction. Sometimes I wouldn't have even noticed their distress if they hadn't asked me if their symptoms were normal after being cured. Maybe there is a link between the age of the host and the puppet's growth. Journey read the reports about the personal details of the maid mages killed so far. Most of those gone on rampage were above 30 years old. Or maybe the younger ones get collected and the older ones don't. Lith and I received many missing persons reports today. Most were about youngsters. Also, if you remember Hesse's words, Mr. Rosa disappeared and then returned. Maybe we should pay him a visit. Dorian proposed. Already tried that. Journey shook her head. His house was the first place we visited, and coincidentally, his landlord told me he left the building around the time you fought the creature. Another unfortunate coincidence is that no maid mage popped out since we extracted the meat puppet. Whoever is pulling the strings is not leaving loose ends. We must move with caution. If the enemy discovers we are getting closer, there's no telling what they could do. In the following days, no more maid mages appeared, whereas 2 more nobles died after being enveloped by a blue pillar. The group kept patrolling the zone nearby the old temple, looking for witnesses and blue-eyed people, but to no avail. The men of the Mage Association investigated all those who had purchased magical resources around the time the incidents had started. Once they had narrowed down the list to a few names, Journey decided to act. With no clues at our disposal, we have only one move available. If we approach our suspects one by one, they might get spooked and disappear, or they may just get killed by our mysterious opponent. Since we can't detain and interrogate middle-importance nobles just because they have renovated their houses, we need to be smart about it. I've contacted Lady Lanza for help, and she has accepted. Tomorrow, she'll organize a masked gala, and all those on our list will be invited. The plan is to round them up in the same place, arrive there unexpected, and if Manohar, after examining them, confirms the presence of a meat puppet, we'll have all the reasons to perform a proper interrogation. Or if they die, we'll at least be able to collect a number of specimens big enough to locate our enemy. Questions. 1. Lith asked, "How do we know that we can trust this Lady Lanza?" "We can't." Journey shook her head. "It's already suspicious how our only 2 leads all came from the Lanza household. It's a trap in the trap. I spoke directly to her, so Mina Lanza is the only one that knows we'll attend. If something happens to our suspects, we'll know she is involved. That's why I've put her under surveillance. Manohar will act as her surprise guest. The god of healing is still one of the most eligible bachelors of the kingdom. While you mingle with the nobles, you'll have to examine our suspects without them noticing. The gala is for tomorrow night. You'd better not screw this up." The following night, all the nobles who had yet to escape from Other despite its crisis were glad to attend to the gala hosted by the only daughter of the lord of the city. Lith still had his doubts about the plan. "I don't trust this Mina. If one or more of her guests get arrested during the gala and the other nobles discover her involvement, her reputation will be ruined. What does she gain from helping us?" He wondered. Maybe she is just worried about her city. Good people do exist. Solus objected. Lith ignored her naive remark and walked slowly through the ballroom. He was wearing a black tuxedo and bow tie, with a silver mask covering his face. He hadn't worn one since the plague, and he discovered that he still liked the feeling it gave. Lith didn't have to worry about hiding his feelings or where his eyes wandered. Camilla was walking by his side while holding his arm. She wore a golden mask and a silk satin red evening dress with a V neckline. The dress left exposed her shoulders and emphasized her bosom. "Why do you think Lady Erna's picked for me such a flashy dress?" she asked with a whisper, glad that the mask would hide her embarrassment. "Because most of our targets are men. If they keep their eyes on you, they will not notice me. Mask or not, my height is easily recognizable," he replied, glad for Journey's choice. "Look, isn't that Count Zalver?" Camilla tugged his arm, nodding to her right. Count Zalver was wearing a black tuxedo too. Contrary to Lady Lanza's description, he had an amiable expression and spoke with a calm voice. Wasn't he supposed to be without any talent for magic? Camilla whispered in surprise. The Count was sipping his wine while his flute was floating on its own. "That's not all," Solus pointed out. "His deep red mana core could barely light a match, but his blood core is another story entirely." Chapter 449. Lith had only met 2 individuals with a double core, and, even if he wasn't aware of that, both of them had been artificially created. The first was Kala, with her blood core which was meant to expedite her turning into a true undead. The second was Gadorf the Wyvern, who had a black core to assist him to forcefully refine his mana core by feeding on the magical energies of others. Both the artificial cores had been placed far enough from the natural one to not alter its functions. According to Solus's mana sense, Count Arik Zalver's situation was completely different. The blood and the mana core so close that they almost overlapped. Unlike Kala's blood core, Zalver's wasn't stable and needed to drain small amounts of mana from the nearby mana core to sustain itself. "This is odd," Solus pondered. "It's not like the monster you created by accident. Zalver's blood is not getting drained while he uses magic. Only the blood composing the core gets consumed, but it doesn't get replaced." Thanks to the mask he was wearing, Lith could activate life vision without anyone noticing his eyes flare up with mana. The Count was alive, yet from his body originated both the red wind of the living and a faint black wind typical of the dead. His life force was stronger than anyone else's in the ballroom, except for Journey and Lith, while his mana flow was weak. Lith had seen yellow-cored individuals with a stronger flow. He took notice that despite the vigor of his movements, the Count was sickly pale and had resorted to light makeup to make his skin appear rosy. Either he has obtained his powers recently, or he is overeager to show them off. Lith, though, while observing that Zolver was performing even the most menial task with magic. His mask was floating in mid-air, just like his wine glass and his plate. Classic rookie mistake. Using 3 spells at once requires a lot of focus and wastes mana you could need later. Him using silverware to eat shows that he is basically a one-trick pony. He can keep things afloat, but he can't move them. Lith looked around the room, keeping an eye on the suspects and his companions. Most of the nobles on Camilla's list had small vortexes coming out of their mana cores. By observing them, Lith and Tista noticed that they could adjust the vortex's strength at will. It would remain dormant while they were chatting and grow in size when they executed elaborate dance moves, like lifting their partners, which required a physical prowess they lacked. All the targets are in sight. Lith whispered in his communication earpiece as he danced around the ballroom with Camilla. Dorian and Tista were on the opposite side of the room, while Journey watched everything from the gallery on the first floor. The ballroom's floor was made of white marble, which together with the pristine white walls reflected the light coming from the crystal chandeliers and made the room as bright as if it was in the sunlight. Aside from the musicians, who were performing from a small bandstand near the north wall, and the refreshment tables lined up along the west and east walls, the room was completely empty. 2 flights of stairs near the entrance lead to the balcony on the first floor, where sofas and armchairs were arranged around small tables for those who needed a place to rest or simply enough quiet to converse without yelling. Where's Manohar? We can't start without him. Lith was worried that the eccentric genius might have fled like usual. He is paying his due, don't worry. Journey sighed. Look at your right. Lith turned around just in time to see the professor dancing with Lady Lanza, who kept him into such a tight embrace that he had barely the space to move without tripping on her legs. She was saying something to him that Lith was unable to hear due to the music and laughter, but judging by Manohar's flustered face, the young lady was hitting hard on him. She was as lithe as a feather, while he looked like a death row inmate. I had to promise Minna a bit of alone time with our resident genius to obtain her help. I hope she's only interested in his status of royal healer rather than in his personality. Otherwise, she's even more insane than he is. Journey explained. The orchestra was playing a tune similar to a Viennese waltz, where the dancers had to hold each other closely. Camilla was short of breath due to the dance being fast-paced and her lacking exercise. How can you scout, dance, talk, and not even breaking a sweat? She panted. Practice. Lith lied. His enhanced physique made such a dance like slow motion, while water fusion allowed him to move with grace despite his natural aversion for ballrooms. They reached a refreshment table just in time before the following dance began. Camilla took off her golden mask to have something to drink, revealing her flushed cheeks. Her red lipstick matched her dress and emphasized her lips, making her quite attractive. Unluckily, Lith wasn't the only one seeing her that way. Count Zolver was so enthusiastic about his newfound abilities that he had been switching dames all night. He would only approach those who, after removing their masks, proved to be worthy of his consideration. The night is too short to waste it on ugly ducklings, he thought. There were several ladies he was keeping an eye on, but Camilla was the only one who had stopped dancing, so he followed them like a lion stalking its prey. Good evening, dear friends, he said, approaching the couple and making Lith curse his bad luck. Thank heavens Tista's dress is baggy and Journey was adamant about never removing our masks. The two of us are too easily recognizable, even if for completely different reasons. Lith thought. The gala is an opportunity to mingle. Zolver continued while looking only at Camilla and ignoring Lith. Don't you think you are being rude hogging such a fair lady all by yourself? Let have her some fun, Zolver said while patting Lith's arm. Solus could see with mana sense a small thread of mana emanating from the Count's eyes. It was very similar, yet different, to spirit magic, and it quickly traveled along Zolver's cheeks, neck, and arm before entering Lith's body and go straight up to his brain. Lith felt a small nudge, like he was tired of Camilla's company and wanted to stay alone for a while. Thanks, but we're engaged. Camilla smiled while clinging to Lith's arm. No way I'm letting this creep put his hands on me. Meat puppet or not, there's something wrong with this guy. Camilla thought. Her survival instinct was screaming at her. Come on, just a dance. It's all that I ask. He took her hand too fast for her to dodge him, and another mana thread emanated from the Count's eyes. Even your fiancé agrees, right? This time Zolver grabbed Litha's arm and gave him a double dose, just to be safe. Just one dance. Camilla echoed. Suddenly, she felt very rude refusing such a gentleman's plea. Yet she still refused to move. Come on, they are about to start. Zolver was about to pull her when Litha's hand intercepted the Count's in a grip. Nice try, but no, Lith said with a snarl. Chapter 450. As soon as the physical contact was broken, Camilla snapped out of it and hid behind Lith so fast that she almost dropped her wine glass. Count Zolver's surprise intensified when he sent more and more waves of his willpower only for them to crash against Litha's. The mesmerize ability required to make eye and physical contact with the target. It could nudge their will, making them more receptive to friendly advices. It couldn't force anyone to do something they weren't willing to do, though. It could only manipulate someone's feelings, not their nature. In Litha's case, it would have been easier to tilt Mogur's axis than convince him to part from something or someone he deemed as his own. This guy must be mad jealous to resist that easily. Well, if the easy way doesn't work, the hard was will. Zolver thought while returning the grip. I don't think you recognized me, dear friend. I'm Count Zolver, and I'm a very powerful man. You don't want to have me as your enemy. Watch out. Solus warned Lith. The blood core expenditure is much bigger than before. His life force is now even stronger than yours. For once Solus was happy to not have a body. Otherwise she would have kicked the Count to the curb and blown their cover. Her hate for creeps was only surpassed by that for superpowered creeps. Really, Lith remained unfazed by activating earth and fire fusion to even the field. I think you should reconsider your actions. He let pure mana flow into his left hand, making the runes Kala had gifted him resurface on his palm. Despite their white glow, only Lith and the Count seemed capable of seeing them. According to Kala, they are an introduction letter. If Zolver is involved with the undead community, this should resolve the matter without him making a fuss. Lith thought, if the one controlling the meat puppets is really a necromancer, I can't risk exposing our plan. Sadly, the Count had no idea what they meant. His eyes flared red as a thin black fog formed a small dome around them, which seemed to rob its surroundings of light and warmth. Those near to the scene unconsciously stepped away. No one was able to see or hear what was happening inside the fog dome unless they focused really hard on its presence. Camilla had no idea what was happening, but she was starting to get scared. I'll ask you one last time. Let the lady come with me, and I'll make it worth her while. At that point, the Count couldn't care less about Camilla. It had become a matter of power. He couldn't stand the idea of a lesser man disrespecting him. Not now that he had finally obtained the invincible power he had always dreamed about. His killing intent filled the dome, adding mental pressure to the physical one. Lith was tired of playing nice. Instead of replying, he activated invigoration, which allowed him to detect that there were two different kinds of blood flowing inside Zolver's veins. One was abundant, weak, and held less magical power than Litha's dirty laundry. The other was thin and of unknown origin, but it carried enough mana to make a mouse as dangerous as a tiger. Lith released small pulses of darkness magic that destroyed the undead blood coursing through his opponent's veins. Despite feeling weak, Zolver refused to budge and kept pumping more and more power until his blood core was on the verge of collapsing. Peace, brother. Please, forgive my vassal. He's still unaware of the protocols among our kin. Another man stepped forward, so fast that Lith didn't even notice his appearance until it was too late. He was around 60 years old, barely 1.72 meters, 5 feet 8 inches, tall, with silver hair and goatee. His silver-rimmed monocle couldn't hide the red glow from his eyes as he grabbed Litha's wrist with enough strength to force him to let go of the Count. He had a bright blood core empowered by centuries of experience and abundant feeding. The man had gentle features and a warm smile, but in his eyes Lith saw a beast ready to attack. You can call me Kalarn, The newcomer only needed a second to understand that Lith was one of the living. Kalarn's pretense of kindness disappeared, replaced by a feral snarl as a second fog dome covered the scene. What's a dog of the Dawn Court doing here? Who's your master? He asked while his iron grip turned into a vice. Kalen released enough killing intent that Camilla almost forgot how to breathe. Lith was stuck into place. His wrist kept cracking and healing almost at the same time, thanks to light fusion. He felt an immense pressure coming from the small man in front of him, with a force that closely reminded him of Scarlet the Scorpicore. Yet he refused to yield. He was stronger than 4 years ago and had learned many new tricks. He countered the killing intent by releasing his own, while at the same time releasing a strong pulse of darkness magic that forced the undead to release his grip. The pain was so intense that Kalen growled in pain, baring for a split-second canine teeth too long to be human. I was enjoying my evening, like everybody else, until your Renfield here bothered me and my companion. Lith had no idea what the Dawn Court was, nor what vampire protocols might require. So he decided to bluff his way out by confusing his opponent as much as he was. Kalarn was indeed confused. He had never heard the term Renfield, but he was certain it had to be an insult. My name is Scourge. He used his code word for help while activating his communication earpiece with spirit magic. Kala the White sent me here. As soon as she heard Litha's safe word, Journey tried to locate him and Camilla. The ballroom was reduced to a blur like she was looking through a distorting glass. Only her focus and training allowed her to see through the fog. If I don't hear from you within a minute, I'll send the reinforcements, she said. Kalarn snarled again. His enhanced senses allowed him to hear Journey's voice, but once again he had no idea who she was or what she was talking about. I never heard of this Kala. He refused to back down to a human in his own turf, but Kalarn hadn't survived for so long by being stupid. Just like I never heard about you. Lith had noticed that the vampire had lost part of his edge right after Journey's message. There are too many people around us. I doubt he wants to fight at all costs. Time to raise the ante. Lith thought while powering up Kala's runes again. These are my references. If you want to offend the Dawn Court for that lustful idiot, be my guest. Camilla felt like she was spectating two strong currents clashing against each other, each wave stronger than the previous one. Kalarn was amazed by the amount of killing intent Lith was releasing. Amazed and intrigued. Let's go, Zolver. We're done here, he said when the minute was almost over and the fog dome unable to hide the pressure they exerted. I don't care who you are, he said to Lith as parting words. Mess with the Night Court's plans, and I'll make you pay. Then when he noticed Zolver's idiotic grin, he added, right after disposing of you for forcing my hand. Zolver's grin disappeared, and not even his makeup could hide his pallor anymore.